Did I send you those pictures in October, Rendell, of the serial
Yeah,
shitter?
you did. That's why I said that, because I remember those photos she sent me.
I did have deer hit that scrape after the fact. They're just mushing it in.
Yeah, man.
That's
Just waffle stomping it.
Just put a big steamer right in that thing,
yeah.
man.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and Deer Grow is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours. But the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get Deer Grow back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format. So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with Deer Grow and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and I mean, with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, I mean, what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out Deer Grow at deergrow.com. And we're back.
Hey.
HUNTR Podcast, episode 109.
Good to be back.
Nick's got us going. It is officially the new year.
And we're caught up.
We're caught up, yeah. This is, it's January 5th, so if you're listening to this, it's what, the 9th? Something like that?
Yeah.
Give or take?
Tuesday.
Yep, the 9th.
Thursday to Tuesday.
Yep. So I guess a couple things. Number one, if you're listening to this and you are heading to Indianapolis for the ATA show this week, Jared and I will be there walking the floor Thursday. Mm-hmm. We aren't going to have the pod set up. Frankly, couldn't justify the cost.
Be wearing a disguise.
Yes.
Nose and mustache.
I'm just going to shave into a mustache. I might. That's actually not a bad idea.
Like anybody would
go handlebar?
Yeah,
I kind of like that. Yeah. So we're only going to be there for a day. Well, essentially a night and a day. We'll get there Wednesday evening and just kind of walk the floor for a day. Figure we got to go.
Yeah.
I wish we were doing I kind of do wish we were doing the pod there. That was a lot of fun last year, but the cost was like outrageous. And they didn't really negotiate. Like I wrote them and said, hey, be happy to set up the pod there if you guys give us space. And then nothing. Mm-hmm. Apparently we're not that big of a deal.
No. Obviously not.
Obviously.
Yeah, it was expensive. It's just, we'll do it from here, and
They're like, have you heard of Steve Rendell? I'm like, yeah, you're not him. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Does your name say meat eater? No, exactly. Get out of my face.
It says Hunter.
Get out of my face.
So anyways, we'll be there walking around. So if you see us, grab us, say hi. Cool.
Yeah.
What else we got going on?
My dad shot a giant buck.
Oh my God, I forgot about this. It was so funny because I was like, was it yesterday that he finally made the official Facebook post?
Oh, did he?
It was crazy. I'm like, dude, I would have been before
I'm not on Facebook.
Before that deer was even dead, I would have been posting on Facebook oh my God, I shot a giant.
I don't think he had time. Well, I guess he had some pictures, but did he? We spent New Year's, with some friends out of state, and they were there. So
Christmas.
Day after Christmas.
Yeah.
He shot that buck on the 26th.
Okay.
Day after Christmas.
And we talked about because we had that giant cold front blow through on the Christmas Eve.
Right. And so if you remember the podcast before, I was,
you're building the arrows.
I was pointing at that cold front that was coming. I was like, dude, it's going to be right over Christmas. I don't know if he's going to get out or not. And it wasn't until the day after Christmas we'd left, and he went out to a blind. It was a pop-up blind that I told him to set, which is crazy. You know what I mean?
He put it up
about a week before.
A week before.
And
surprised it didn't blow away like a tumbleweed.
Yep. And I truthfully, I had gotten. This is the big A point that I was hunting in October.
Not the deer. He wasn't going in there to hunt that deer though.
Not necessarily. It was one of the deer.
In the area.
Potentially. But there was honestly another spot that Jed and Silas were hunting the same day that I figured had a better shot.
Because he had been there.
He'd been there that day at noon.
Yep.
On the property anyways. And so, I mean, I'm not going to take too much credit. Like Dad, I did tell him where to set up the blind. And but he, on his own volition, chose that day to go out.
Yep.
And there was a deer named Lebrowski
which is what we thought he was going to kill. Frankly, he thought he did shoot.
Yep. So I get the call, and I figured it was before dark. He called and he's like, he's all shook up, you know. He's like, I'm pretty sure I just shot Lebrowski. I'm like, dude, I was like, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
And Lebrowski's like 135 inch, I think 5-year-old 8-point roamer.
Yeah,
you know,
moves a lot.
We've never seen him in person, so you know, cool, very very cool. So I was like, that's awesome. And I'm at home here, 2 hours away, and I was like, good shot. You know, it's obviously the first question you got to ask. And he's like,
classic response from Dwayne.
Well, you know, he's like, I think so. He's like, it was a little back and a little high, and that was the case. You know, it was not a bad shot. And so I said, cool. I said, just, you know, do you need me to come up? And you know, he's like, well, you know, I don't. It was snowing, or it had just snowed, so it just should be an easy blood trail.
He found blood pretty instantaneously.
I was like, yeah, dude, just go out to where he shot him, see if you can find the arrow, see if you can find blood. He called me back, you know, 20 minutes later, and he's like, you know, send me some pictures of the blood. I'm like, dude, he's spraying. You know, that's a good sign. So he went back to the house. I called Jed, asked if he could go help Dad because Jed's kind of fills in my absence. You know,
right there.
And they were only hunting a quarter mile away.
Yeah,
if that.
Yeah,
right across the road, and so it was kind of weird how I got the news.
This is really funny.
Because apparently some pictures were sent to groups that I was in, but I didn't see them first. So I got response texts from you and my Uncle Dale that said, that's not Lebrowski.
No.
And then I see the picture, and I see Dad grinning with this giant 8-point, like the biggest 8-point I've ever seen.
I was like, I got the picture. I'm like, yeah, that's not Lebrowski.
And so, you know, I'm sure I called Dad first, ended up FaceTiming him. They're doing the recovery. This is the giant 8-point that I just called the big 8. Silas, Jed's son, you know, 10 years old, maybe had named him the reindeer buck.
Oh, okay. I was wondering where that name came from.
Yeah, dude, Silas has good names. He also named the Crumplehorn.
Oh, very nice.
So
very Christmas.
So the reindeer buck is dead.
Yeah.
And Dad, so back to this trip that we made here shortly after, Dad had to leave to go to the airport at 3 a.m.
Right.
The next day.
To Colorado.
The next day. So I had already offered to, like, hey, if you can't find it, like, don't push it. I'll still thinking it's Lebrowski because obviously we're going to give any deer.
Yeah, it was like 10 degrees that night.
He only went 100 yards.
Yeah.
It was a good shot, double lung. I'm sorry, liver and lung. I think.
Yeah. Quarter away.
Quartering away, which is funny because, you know, Dad's initial story was quarter
two. Yeah.
The same way he says it. Yeah, it's a north wind coming from to the north. Yeah, it's a very Dad thing to do. But you'll see him.
Yes.
I think our guest here is Rendell Erik.
You like
spoiler alert. Eric's, you know, Rendell's here listening too. So
yeah,
I'm gonna bring him out. I haven't shown it to Jeremy yet because I think
smuggled it past me as I was like working on the computer. I'm like, what's this?
I think you're gonna be super impressed with this deer.
Well, I mean, how we did score it
162.5.
That's a giant
4/8
clean
technician.
Clean, no kickers. 162.5.
Clean 8. He's 23 inches inside, 72-inch beams. One's a little shorter.
No, 27-inch beams.
Sorry, what did I say?
72.
Yeah, reverse that.
Yes.
27-inch beams. Yeah. All right, ready?
Yes. Oh my God, dude. What the hell?
I feel like it's more impressive if you look at one antler at a time and try to figure out how is it that big?
What?
How is there so much space between his tines? Here you go.
Oh my God, dude.
I think there's 7.5-inch brows.
Yeah. This too is super impressive. It was over 12, wasn't it?
I think it's 12.5.
Oh my God.
Something like that.
Well, because here's the thing, and I mean, in retrospect, we said like, oh, he has a weak
like that
2.
one's like 7.5 also. Same as the brows.
You know, and I mean
this 3's better though. See, he makes it up here.
Huge, yeah. I mean, considering, yes, he has a weak 2, but dude, that is just a mammoth. Oh my God.
Have you ever seen a deer that's 23 inches inside?
No.
I haven't.
No. Frankly, I haven't seen many deer with over 12-inch tines.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. He's not real massive.
4.5 at the bases.
Yeah.
I can't believe he hadn't broken any of them tines off, to be honest, this late in the season.
Yeah, I mean, just a little bit off his brow and 2s or 3s.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. And I mean, what's so crazy to think of is like 162.5, that deer scores pretty much exactly what that 11-point behind you scores, that mainframe 11.
Let's see. I wrote it down here.
Oh, What a toad, dude.
So his right side's 68. This side's 68 inches.
Mm-hmm.
That side is 71 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And then 23 inches inside.
Wow.
And I wasn't giving him anything either. I mean, that's John Beadle actually came over.
I was on the
We were on the video call together, and John came in, so he was keeping me honest on the measurements.
Damn, dude.
I actually drove up last night to get it. I left it there initially, and then worked out. I had to go get the
What a man.
the Ranger for showing, so I grabbed him, and I was like,
I'll make sure Rendell sees that.
gotta show Jeremy.
I'm sure he's looking at it now.
Yeah, just like it's weird because it's like just an 8-point,
I know.
but it's like what? Look at that.
I mean, there's not much better than just a giant big 8-point, like just clean, massive deer. That's awesome. Unbelievable. I mean, deer of a lifetime.
That's what I told him. I was like,
There aren't many clean 168s killed. I mean, people are going to listen to this. So, what about this guy? Or I know this guy that shot a 170. Cool. I'm talking clean 168 point. There are not many shot.
we can ditch it if it gets in the way, but I took it to Trav's taxidermy. So I'm like the in at Trav's now because they're cutting off mounts left and right.
Yeah, because Trav has 2 of mine.
You can only take so many, and I called him ahead of time. I said, "Hey, dude, can you take one more?" And he was familiar with the deer.
So he's got yours, he's got your dad's, he's got 2 of mine.
Yeah, and I took it in, and Trav was sick so I didn't actually see him, but his brother was there. I think his name's Zach, and he does all the skull capping and stuff. And he's like, "That's the biggest 8-point we've seen this year."
Yeah.
And he showed me a couple of others. I mean, super impressive. 150 some inch 8-point,
Which is a giant.
But that's
168 is.
Yeah, I keep telling Dad, I'm like, you understand what you have here. I'm like, this is a world class 8-point.
And again, if this matched, you're talking about just under gross boon 8-point. Mm-hmm. If that matched the other 2, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, 68 basically.
Well, I think he makes some of it up in his 3 there. So he's, as you saw, fairly symmetrical. He's maybe 3 inches off.
3 inches off.
But yeah, a giant.
Pretty crazy, man.
Dad was stoked that he went over 160. That's Dad's biggest buck ever, and
he hunts hard, man.
To my knowledge, the biggest buck that's ever come off the farm. Surely the biggest 8-point.
Hunts hard. Yeah, on a new part of the farm that you guys haven't hunted previously, really. Right?
Well, and yeah, no, that's right. And honestly, on a place that I would look at and say, not the best habitat.
Sure. Comparative to what's around.
This deer, honestly, was what he was doing was he was. I do think he was betting on Jed's property.
Sure.
At least recently, a majority of the time. There's a big cut corn. It was a standing cornfield for a long time that I thought was kind of central to his core area.
Yeah.
And he just wasn't moving a lot in daylight. Eventually, once I lost him at the end of October because I was hunting him in October. He had disappeared there.
Crops started to come down around. Beans turned.
I tagged out early March, and so I left those cameras running where they were. And eventually, in December, we moved some cameras around, and he started showing back up. And as I said on a previous podcast, Jed and Dad were kind of volleying on who would hunt these certain spots because some of them were overlapping.
Yeah,
and
a big buck doesn't make many mistakes like this until that cold weather and hunger sets in, and he's got to eat.
We'd only seen him in daylight twice, and both of those were in the past 3 weeks. Once it started getting cold, cold.
What a mammoth!
And I know for a fact that deer had been in multiple people's crosshairs. Then it just didn't happen. It didn't happen. One of them was Jared, Jed's brother. Saw him, pretty close to where he was bedding. Just was really trying to confirm that it was him before he pulled the and just before you know it, he was out of sight.
Oh, crazy.
And there he is.
Pretty cool. I mean, that's a buck that not a ton of history with. Jed did have a picture of him last year. He shared with us.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure he's 5.
Yeah,
is my guess.
He's probably in the 50s last year.
Yeah, probably
low 50s,
maybe. I'm gonna send his teeth in to deer age.
Cool.
Just so we have that information and. But I just from looking at him, I would say pretty confidently he's 5.
Monster. Yeah, not much more to say about that.
That's all I have to say about
that. That's all I have to say about that. Monster. Well, Damn, dude. What a way to kick off the year. And we've got a guest on today. We kind of leaked it a little bit earlier, but we've got Rendell Erik from Iowa with us. If people have or haven't heard of Rendell, he's basically Iowa, lots of public land, killing giant bucks. We've kind of had a kick here with, I guess, Warren Holder and Jared Mills in the past on talking about the Iowa stuff. And, what will be cool to hear from him is, as he kind of mentioned to us pre-podcast, he's from the South, right, originally. Grew up in the Marine family, kind of moved around. He's come to Iowa. This is now what he said is 11th year for the deer hunting. I mean, that's why I moved there. And so what we'll be interested in kind of hearing from him is, his take on Iowa hunting, because, again, I think we've heard in some of our comments and messages, maybe it's not as easy as we make it out to be. Because, again, disclaimer, we've never hunted Iowa.
And in fairness, we've never made it out to be easy, but relative to,
correct,
some other places in the country.
So hearing from Rendell Erik in terms of his ability of where he's been and hunted in the past, especially in the South, and then translating that to Iowa, what's his take there, especially Iowa public ground, and then kind of converting into things that he's finding successful. Because, I'd look at Iowa public ground as, high competition. Obviously a lot of things that he's kind of going against there to succeed, and check out some of the videos and stuff he's done in the past. But I think what will be really interesting is what are those things that he's finding that have made him successful in Iowa over the past 11 years. That it doesn't matter where you're hunting. What can you apply from that to maybe capitalize on some of the opportunities you have? Some
other things we know about Rendell that are of interest, or that I think people will find interesting, is he's a saddle hunter, I believe, almost exclusively, and he's also like a one sticker. So I think he's not getting very high off the ground at all. And for a guy he could correct me, 6'5".
Whoa,
he's a big dude,
and he's one sticking.
Yeah, he's just like barely off the ground.
Oh my, I'm interested.
Kind of his
this
thing, and he's got some sweet footage of bucks that he's killed like right there.
Damn, dude. So. Cool. Let's bring Rendell Erik on. Hey, what's going on, man?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing all right. Kind of pre-podcast, we talked about it, but you at least got your priorities straight at the new place, getting mounts on the wall, right?
Yeah. First thing I threw up. I need my other ones back, but they're still at the taxidermist.
Well, there you go.
Here, we'll give you another look here. I know you were on and watching, but can you see that?
Yeah, man, that's a giant.
Crazy, dude.
I texted you the picture, right, with Dad holding him?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, man.
Toad.
That gives me a better idea of that one I was chasing this season.
Does it?
Yeah, that one I was chasing's got to be at least 180.
Woof!
Wow. Those are some of the nighttime public pictures you'd sent me. The tall tined.
Yeah, that mega 8-buck that I sent you the pictures of with that mega mass.
Yeah, monster.
Damn, dude.
Monster. And they're all gone, right? As soon as the pressure got on, you said they all left.
Yeah, a lot of pheasant hunters got in there, and after rut trickled out, they moved. I went in there the other day and hunted with the muzzleloader, and I didn't see a single deer in there at all. So
really?
I think they've shifted for the wintertime.
What do you think in terms of their shift in that territory? I mean, are they literally picking up and just like moving to the adjacent private land, or do you think these deer are like really picking up and moving, significant distances?
I think they move significantly because I was glassing and watching all the private land around, and not a single deer, no does, no yearlings, nothing. It's just a ghost town.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
Which part of Iowa are you in?
I'm in western Iowa.
Western, like south, north, central?
Southwestern, yeah.
Southwestern.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we kind of hear, Rendell, is that like a lot of people basically make the assumption, as do Jared and I to a point, because we haven't hunted Iowa, that it's just, I don't know, in comparison to other places, easier to kill bigger bucks. What would be your gut response to that?
Easier is the wrong word. We got to stop saying that.
I know.
And it comes from, we're like, chubby kids with our faces against the glass like we've never been.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly our taste comes from places like Kansas. It just seems like the deer do what deer are supposed to do. And we know what they're supposed to do. And so the two things seem to, the success seems to happen more frequently.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it depends on what you're doing, if you're hunting public versus private. I think the public land is a lot harder than what people think. And it depends on what part of the season you're in. Early season, I would probably agree with that. As the season gets later, I would disagree, especially late season hunting public land. It's a grind. It's probably one of the hardest things I've done. And your definition of a big buck, what is that? A guy coming from the South is looking for a 120, 130. I would agree with that. But if you're hunting, I've been on 200-inch bucks and a bunch of bucks over 160, and it takes a lot of work to scout and find those bucks. So there's not a booner behind every tree like people think.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think that I think what's so hard for people to kind of fathom, right, who have not hunted Iowa, is simply, call it YouTube or TV or whatever, right? They just hear about the stories and they see the social media posts of bucks coming out of there. And, I won't say it seems like there's a booner behind every tree, but surely, we can all agree that between states like Iowa and Kansas, there are probably more mature bucks per square mile in those states than there are most of the other deer hunting states.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Limited out-of-state tags, limited gun hunting. The gun hunting's not in the ruts in December. That helps a ton. Land's managed really well. Even the public land is some of the best I've been on for what little public land we have. Iowa's like 48th or 49th for public land, the actual acreage that we have for it. So there's not a lot of public land compared to other states.
That's interesting. I did not know that. What I know that just kind of talking to more and more people around Iowa, gun hunting pressure is a thing, right? People will say, well, there's just not a lot of people. It sounds like even though it's outside of the rut, gun hunting is still a very deep rooted tradition in that state. And especially, talking to the holders and Duncan and like a lot of guys do deer drives still in the state of Iowa.
Oh yeah, the Orange Army will be out there driving deer. I stay out of the woods. I'm good.
Isn't that crazy? Between that and also Iowa is a party tag hunting. So there are some things that if you looked at it straight from the bullet points that you would say, man, those are some, like all these guys doing deer drives, all these guys being able to do party hunts. Like there are some things that could negatively affect and multiple bucks per year. We talk about a lot of these states, even a state like Ohio, 1 buck per year. And it's a great state. You go to Iowa and, two bucks unless you're a landowner, in which you can kill 3.
Yeah, that's correct. So, yeah, I think the deer drives and stuff does hurt the deer population a little bit, but to each their own. If it's legal, I don't care what other people do. I just do my own thing, and I'm not really a complainer. I just do what I love and I get after it.
Yeah.
Dude, how long you been in Iowa?
11 years.
11 years? And you made the decision to move up there to hunt?
Yeah, I've never even been to Iowa before. I just drove up here, packed all my stuff, and I just picked a random town on a map that was by a bunch of public land, and
that's so funny, dude.
Are you married?
I am now, unfortunately.
Okay. So that happened after the fact. That happened after the fact then.
Yeah.
Okay. She didn't decide to come with you.
Does her family own land?
Unfortunately, they don't, but I hunt public, so it doesn't matter.
I'm curious, being like the 49th or whatever state in terms of size of public land and being almost exclusively public land hunter, why you chose Iowa over, some other big buck states that have a lot more public options or even walk-in options.
Giant bucks. I ain't gonna lie. Having that gun season out of the rut. man, you grew up with it, seeing it on TV, you know, when hunting got really big. And I used to watch a lot of DVDs you'd buy, or VHS back then, you know, you'd watch like the old Primos and stuff like that, Real Tree, and everybody was in Iowa. And you heard about the Iowa craze like in the 90s, you know, you'd see guys would see 100 deer a day. I don't know, it just had that mystique to it. It still does. Like, all my buddies always text me and call me about Iowa. It's just like one of those golden tickets almost if you draw a tag.
Yeah, it certainly is. That's what I told you. It's like whether the deer hunting is that much better or not, just the fact that they keep us out, us being non-residents for 5-6 years, keeps that mystique, very, very much alive. It's like Jeremy and I are, whatever, 4 years in, when we're like, someday, we'll get to.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. It's like when you think about the outside looking in, like you said, our face pressed against the window, we have high expectations. And I guess the question would be, to you, like, has it lived up to the hype?
We had that massive VHD kill off right after I got here.
Yeah, that was like 2012. Yeah.
Yeah. 2012 ish. I had a bunch of cameras out the year before that, and I think I got over 100 different bucks on some properties. And then after that EHD came through, I got like 7 when I had like 100 something before the year before. So it really dropped the population. Then we had another little spout of EHD a couple of years ago that kind of knocked the population back down and kind of messed with the age class a little bit. But I mean, for me, I've killed some giant bucks guys would only dream of killing. And I've gotten to hunt 200-inch bucks on public and a bunch of other giant bucks. And last year I had like 15 bucks over 150 I found on public last year.
Holy cow, man. Yeah, I think that's what, Jared and I talk about it a lot. For us, every season is we just want to be in the game. Right? We want to be in the game for a giant buck, and it doesn't matter if the odds of getting that deer are super or not. But if we're in the game, we at least feel like we have a chance. And I think that's probably what a lot of guys listen to this are really looking for. Like, sure, it's great to have the ability to jump on a bunch of bucks. And I think one thing that I watched from you in the past that I thought was really interesting is, I would say your style of hunting is much like mine in that you're aggressive. You go
first skill thing.
Yeah, you go after, which is my style too. And I think where a lot of guys listening to this who maybe are private land hunters have a difficulty with that is if they screw up, they blow their property or whatever, they're done, right? They're out of the game. If you mess up, you're just like, cool, next in line, right? That's the mindset.
Exactly. I scout. I did over 200 miles of boots on the ground in the postseason this year, and I hunt in a 3 to 4 hour radius in Iowa. So I can go anywhere. I got hundreds of spots almost now built up that I can just bounce around. So definitely, I'm just going to get after it. If I don't feel confident, I'm going to kill something, and I'm not going to sit there. I'll just keep moving. Sure. And even sometimes I don't even hunt because I didn't find something I was looking for when I went in the scout, because I'll go in and blow everything out, postseason, get in there, mark everything, pick out trees sometimes, but then I'll loop back in, run trail cameras, and then I'll check the fringes in the season. And if something's not open, you're going to keep going. I'm not going to sit where there's no open sign. So, And sometimes I'll walk through multiple bedding areas, which will mess it up. But like you said, I can bounce around. But I do have some buddies that own private. And yeah, if they did that, it might hurt them a lot. But I've noticed in Iowa, a lot of these big mature bucks, like 5.5 and up, they really lock in a really core area though. And some of them are really hard to blow out. Like I can be right on top of them every day and they'll still stay right in there and they'll play that game. And some of them are really timid, and you get in there once and you're like half mile away and they smell your track in a cornfield. They're gone. Like you never see them again. So a lot of it has to do with like the buck's personality, but it just depends on what you're doing.
I feel that way too. It's funny. Like the best most effective strategy is probably somewhere between like the public and private mindset. Like those public guys are, hey, we've got unlimited acreage potentially that we can hunt. We could go scout this. If we blow it out, we'll
move to the next.
We'll make an adjustment. And the private guys are constantly trying to protect what they have.
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep my deer on this piece, and I want to make sure that they're not messed with. I want to hunt them this way, and
which is nearly impossible unless you have larger acreage.
well, you certainly miss out on opportunities that being more aggressive would afford you.
Agree.
But you run the risk of blowing them off your property. And so, it really is probably somewhere in between. Feel free if you have something to say there. I was going to ask Rendell if you could elaborate. You kind of started touching on starting this time of year, or maybe just after the season is over. It sounds like you get in and start doing a little bit of scouting just to probably get the lay of land for different places. I'm curious if you can give us kind of like a, as the season approaches, starting with, I know you're running trail cameras, identifying different deer that you might want to hunt into, some scouting phases, like maybe what that might look like. And then all the way to, I know you've had some success too. Can you kind of share with us what a season might look like from this point?
Yeah. So, Iowa closes January 10th every year. And the next weekend I'm in the woods getting ready for the next season right away, putting boots on the ground.
Which is perfect. Not to cut you off there, but dude, like Kansas is over now.
Yep.
And it seems like, you really have to get lucky to get that cold front in December for the late season hunt. So the fact that you've got 2 weeks there almost in Iowa gives you a nice opportunity there.
Yeah, I hunted last night and I had a 25 deer roll out into some standing beans that I found. We got a lot of shed bucks already this year, which is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of throwing me off a little bit. But
right.
Since those giants moved off and shifted onto private somewhere, I just been fun hunting, just jumping in places that I postseason scouted, because a lot of those areas, those deer shift into. So if you're doing your postseason scouting, it helps you late season, but it helps you for the next season too. And sometimes I think crop rotation plays more into it to what guys think. So a lot of my postseason this year probably won't help me that much this coming season, but another season from now, when it's back to the same crop rotation, it'll help me, because a lot of those bucks will shift back in. A lot of guys don't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes sense.
That's the always hunting mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I remember from 2 years ago, the crop was this. I found the shed here.
We're
now in late season again. The food is back.
I think that's a big, that goes back to that trend aspect of things. Like, a lot of guys really focus and hone in on like a specific deer, but they do it based on, I think he'll be here. Whereas if you go back and look at that historical data on that deer, for whatever reason, barring there's environmental changes, that deer does a lot of the same things, again, very similar to what he did previously. There's factors that pressure or crop rotations that might change that. But if things align in a similar sense, you can pretty much bet that he's going to do that again, the next year.
Yeah, I noticed like a 2 to 3 day window on trail cameras. Some of the same bucks will show back up if they have the same environmental conditions.
Isn't that crazy?
It's pretty wild.
You think of like us in a cyclic cycle and how, time and day oriented we are. To a deer, there's no boundaries to that stuff. Obviously there's photo periods changing and things, but they just figure out, I think was it Carl last week? He was telling us about those deer excursions that were happening, and like literally on the same day in the middle of March, for some random ass reason, multiple years in a row, this buck would make like a 5-mile journey. And it's like, what? Like how? Why? Like maybe it's just pure stupid coincidence, but you got to think there's something else there.
There's an instinctual element to it for sure. I mean, I think it's, there's motivators like food,
sure,
breed, water, bed, overlapped with those ancestral, instincts to go and to do a certain thing.
I actually think bucks scout, man. Like they go scout their summer range, they go scout their fall range, they're scouting food sources, they're making sure it's on the up and up before they make that final push into whatever phase they're going into. I mean, a lot of guys don't think that, but I noticed that a lot. A buck will make like a 2 or 3 day excursion somewhere, check it out. He'll show up on my game cam and he'll be gone. And then I'll catch him like maybe a month or two later once it rolls back in the season, or even after the season, they might pop in just to check out and leave. So it's kind of interesting. Like, there's so much about deer that we just don't know yet. We're still learning a bunch. So I find it really fascinating, like little things like that I've noticed over the years.
I think one thing that I'd be curious of is, I assume going into a season, you have certain expectations for the quality of deer that you're looking to chase, right? So with having all of these spots, I mean, what are you relying on? Is it visual? Is it trail camera to say, okay, there is a buck of that caliber in here? Or, in some cases, are there areas that you're just like, man, I kind of have to get in there and at least hunt it once just to know what's in there?
Well, and here with that, I'll let him finish kind of the season as you're figuring out which bucks to hunt. It's kind of the same question. We'll let you go with that.
Yeah, so I don't want to be a one-trick pony. I want to be really versatile, and I want to be consistent. Consistency comes with being really well-rounded on what you're doing. So I'm trying to gain as much different pieces to the puzzle as I can. So in the postseason, I'm going in, I'm looking at the sign, I'm marking spots based on what I see. And there's certain things that I really look for that I'm honing in on, is like big rubs that are high up. If you get a big rub up on me, and I'm 6'8", by the way. Not
You're 6'8"?
Wow.
You're shitting me.
I didn't want to overestimate there, but
no, I'm a monster, man.
Holy cow. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is going to be a whole different topic during the podcast of how does a dude at 6'8", sit in a saddle and not get picked out by a deer.
He had to get on one knee to hang those mounts behind him.
Yeah, man, I did.
Damn, dude.
I'm a leaner, and I lean really hard off the tree like that. When I sent him some video of me leaning on that buck that I shot, I put the camera up on a tree. It went by. Then I got back up in my setup and got exactly like I just look like a giant branch because you can lean way off on that angle.
Yeah.
And if you got good back cover, the deer just go right by me. I've almost had bucks hit their racks on my platform because they just don't see me. They just walk right underneath me because I hunt really low.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing because we got into that the last podcast a little bit, and maybe we'll spin back on this here in a second. But obviously from a danger situation, right? Deer are constantly looking level to them. That's the predator prey aspect, right? Coyotes, in Minnesota and stuff, wolves, whatever. From an aerial side, and even to what Rendell's saying here of like, let's say you're 5 feet off the ground or 6 feet off the ground. I mean, what threats come to them unless you're in like mountain lion territory or something where it's potentially pouncing out of a tree? Do these deer have? They don't. So I mean, it's not that I don't think they pay attention to it, but it's
only people, and it's pretty obvious where you hunt where there's people pressure that they do look up
for sure. Yeah, I would agree. So anyway,
I think they actually look above me when they come out because everybody's hunting higher. So they look up. And I've heard a few people talk about there's like a field of view in a deer that is like the 12 to 15 foot range. It's kind of like hazy in their vision. I don't know if that's true or not. I just heard it on some different podcasts, but it seems like when I'm in that 8 to 12 foot zone, because I mean, even one stick, I'm getting pretty high because I'm 6. I was
gonna say 6'8" and one stick, one stick up, and you're 15 foot.
Well,
that's I'm up there.
That's higher than I thought. 8 to 15 is reasonable. I mean, most of my stands, I would say, are 15 foot.
Yeah.
I've even hooked a saddle on the ground and just put my feet on the ground and pivot around in the saddle. If I do whatever it takes, man. If I got to be in that tree or I got to be in that spot, I'm going to make it work. I mean, I'll dig a hole and put my legs down in it if I have to. Like, I don't really care.
I've thought about that many times.
I mean, it is interesting when you start to think about that because, I mean, Jared and I have had back and forth about, because we're hang-on guys. I mean, that's what we kind of did our entire lives, right? And so we've dabbled in the saddle thing and, it takes some time to get used to. But there are definitely situations where it makes sense. Like if I'm hunting in a 6 or 7 year old clear cut where the oldest tree, you know, is only 6 inches DBH, right? I'm not getting 15 feet up in that thing with a hang on. It's not possible. But I could probably put a stick or two and get at 8 to 10 feet and be in a saddle. Yeah, if I move, it's going to give me a little sway. I'm also not 6'8", but you know, it's reasonable, right? I can do it. I can actually succeed with it. So, you know, I think that per kind of your hunting style of being aggressive, which is mine too, man, you got to be able to adapt, because you when you get there into a spot, I think it's instinctive for most hunters, and I'm not just saying like bragging, like there's good hunters and bad hunters, but most good hunters, when they get into a spot, I feel like the tree just sticks out. You're just like, that's where I need to be, right? You just know it. And if you start to compromise either way, I literally could see the percent success decrease by saying, well, yeah, but this is going to be easier. Boom. Okay, maybe it's easier, but now you just dropped 20% likely that you're going to actually get a shot off because of where you're at, because where your wind or your thermals are going. And if you don't process that in your head, it's not saying that you can't kill deer, but surely there are advantages and disadvantages when you're looking at which like specific tree to sit in at a given spot.
Yeah, the closer you get to that buck bedded in that high risk zone, you're putting the odds in the buck's favor. I mean, you're getting in there. If you make any certain sounds, movements, your wind could swirl. I really spent a lot of time wind mapping different terrain types and tree lines, fence rows, just with milkweed to see what variations you get, because what the wind's doing at the parking lot isn't doing it where you're going to be hunting. And sure. I've learned to go off my gut too. Like you said, that first tree you see, right when you start second guessing yourself, you screwed up. Just go with it, man. Because I've had a lot of times my gut told me to do something and my mind overrode that. Mm-hmm. And the deer did exactly what I thought it was going to do with my gut, and I screwed myself.
Yep.
And, you know, that hurt me. So I go more off of instinct now. You just got to trust even if you're building the skill level up, you know, to do whatever, just go with your gut and just do it. I mean, failure is how you learn. It's the best teacher.
I agree.
I couldn't agree more, especially back to what we're talking about, the private land approach or perspective. Mm-hmm. I mean, dude, I spent years being way too conservative, mm-hmm. and I didn't learn a whole lot while I was doing that because I never even saw the deer. You know, sure. I was like, well, I got to be on the very outside fringe. It wasn't until I started being what I thought was overly aggressive that I would even see the deer. Mm-hmm. And, you know, sometimes it would work out and I would kill them, and sometimes, more times than not, it wouldn't. And mm-hmm. I would at that point be able to at least learn why, right. You know, and be able to make an adjustment. So there's definitely, and we talked about that before, like, you have to be able to observe, you know, or at least be in the game to learn anything or have a chance at success.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. I think the aggressive thing is something that most hunters fight with, and that, you know, instinctively to go in there and get in a spot, first sit, first kill, has been how I've killed a lot of my mature bucks. But, you know, whether you're hunting private or public, I think most people's biggest fear is blowing it, right? And thinking that they're done. You know, you've got to be confident enough that wherever you're going to be aggressive, you're putting yourself in the best chance to succeed. And yes, there is a chance that you screw it up, but to be honest, if you're more conservative, you probably aren't going to screw it up, but your chances of success are going to dramatically decrease at the same time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. If you're going to be aggressive, you have to be tough, man, because, man, I've blew out some giants, and mm-hmm. It's gut wrenching.
Yeah,
but
it's
what you got to do to kill them, because that buck's not going to come out 300 yards before dark and get to your cornfield. I mean, you're going to have to go in there and get it. In my experience and running cameras, most of those 5.5-year-old and older bucks, I mean, even on private, they're not making it out there in daylight that much, even when it's not pressured. Unless you get the right cold front or whatever guys want to do with that. I just hunt when I can hunt. Like, it don't matter to me. I just go. Well, I mean, I've killed some big bucks in some really crappy weather, like super hot, cold. It don't matter to me.
Yeah. I killed my deer in a t-shirt and like literally my street clothes this past year. It was 70 something degrees.
Yep. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now, at least, my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone, checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the number one thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
Stealthcam.com, check them out.
I was going to ask you on that kind of same matter of like just have to hunt. So when you, obviously there's certain things you're taking into consideration of what spot you're going into, but you know, are you using cameras to help you know when that deer is moving or pattern it at all? Or once you've located a buck in a specific parcel, or you're like, okay, he's in there, I'm going to just hunt him?
Yeah, I'm just a photo guy. I just want one photo. I know the buck's there. I'm going to rely on my postseason knowledge of the area. So the postseason, I really focus on learning the bedding areas, all the ins and outs, the ditches I can go. Access is one of the most overlooked things of all time. I think access is almost more important than picking the right tree. So I figure out all the accesses to the bedding areas or any spot I would potentially like to hunt. So I know the place. So when the buck shows up, I'm like, all right, I think he's bedded here on this wind, or he's using this terrain feature to move the food. And then I'm going to use my knowledge of the area to go in and cut him off, essentially.
I think it's definitely worth mentioning, like we talk about getting aggressive. It's worth saying that doesn't mean hunting any stand on any wind just because you haven't hunted it yet. Or because, dude, I know a lot of people that for them, that just means going into the heart of the bedding area and
that's hunting stupid, not hunting aggressive.
Well, you can't hunt.
Yeah, that's really dumb.
Yeah, right. So you can't just hunt aggressively without knowledge of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's from that understanding of you know, what the deer are doing, you know, and how you might be able to take advantage of that and being confident about decisions. Like that's what culminates, I think, in an effective, aggressive hunting decision. It's not just hunting just to hunt on any wind in any place. You know, it's got to be calculated.
Yeah. I guess, Rendell, in your kind of experience in the postseason scouting and even probably once you have success in the season, are you finding that some of these mature bucks are bedding relatively consistent in the same area, or are you discovering that they're having multiple beds during a certain time frame?
I think the 5.5-year-old and older buck, they're really locked in a core area. They don't really move that far. They're usually in that couple certain areas, unless they get really pressured super hard, but they normally stick in there. That I find it's the younger bucks that are way more inconsistent with their bedding. They're just like all over the place. So they're a little bit harder to pattern than a mature buck. I feel like they're just in there. That the 200-inch buck I was on the last couple of years, I mean, he was locked in this one draw. Like you could put pressure on him and he would just stay in there, go nocturnal. Man, he'd throw the kitchen sink at you. He wanted to play the game, but I ended up shooting a bigger buck that came by me, and not the 200. But I should have waited. But that other buck came through, and I smoked him. And then they went in there and they clear cut his bedding area out, so I couldn't find him here. Brutal.
Well, that's what I wondered. Is like, you know, as we start talking about the aggressiveness, and again, to Jared's point, hunting smart but aggressive versus just throwing it to no caution, just going and doing it. You know, obviously to do that, you have to be very confident about where that deer is, right? Because as you get aggressive back there, to your point earlier, you know, the closer you get to them, the more cautious you have to be. So if you don't think that a deer is necessarily bedding consistently in that area, you can't necessarily be aggressive because you're going to just end up probably bumping them, or chances of bumping them are much greater versus, hey, I know he's in this draw, in this whatever, 4 acres, right? Now I can plan him being in those 4 acres to what's the destination he's going to travel.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I don't have the proper intel, I'm probably more hesitant to go in. But sometimes I get a little ballsy because I got that slogan, no balls, no bucks. Like, man, I just go for it, man. And it usually ends up not being a good thing, but sometimes I'll just go in there. Like, I got the wind. I know he's bedded around in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm going to scout my way in. It's more like a freestyle.
I like
that.
Like
if I go out of state, sometimes I didn't even postseason scout. I just scout my way in with just in-season sign.
Yep.
And then just looking at the aerial maps on whatever mapping app you want to use. Once you do a ton of postseason scouting and you find a ton of beds, you see a lot of consistencies, and I've gotten way better from that experience for doing it for years. I can just look at a map and be like, well, I think they're going to be here. Now, that's not 100%, but man, I can narrow down an area pretty quick based on the wind where I think that mature buck's going to be. And you got to think outside the box a lot, because a lot of times that buck's not where you think he's going to be. He's in like this year, I found more bucks 100 yards from the road and parking lots than I ever have. Like, I felt like more guys were going deep.
Gotta show them
and they're pushing the deer to the outer edges. I found some giants like 100 yards away from roads, parking lots, whatever. And I feel like, they're monitoring what you're doing to stay alive more so than being way back.
They just have to survive.
These
are good ones.
We got the perfect example of this. This is Kansas. We found these no more than 50 yards from the main parking spot. And I mean,
those are sweet.
Obviously he's chewed to crap, but I mean, if I had to envision what this deer was at one time, that's 180-inch 8-point.
Yeah,
that's a stud, man.
Mega kickers. I mean, that mass measurement right there is probably 5 1/4.
Yeah, and he had his brows were like 10 inches.
Yeah, they were kind of chewed off.
They were almost chewed off.
I mean, just a monster, but right there, right on public.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's where and I asked you about the cameras because we've had numerous conversations on this podcast about the benefits of cell cams and how great they've been, especially when you can't get to areas. That said, they are also my arch nemesis in the fact that they talk me out of hunting an area more than anything else, out there. The fact that I haven't got a picture of them in a week, or I only am getting them at 2 a.m., like all of those factors go into my head and I overprocess them and I just wait, right?
Not to make this too serious on the pod. I don't mean to spring this on you, but I think we're nearing the point of an intervention for you.
I know. And I love it. Listen, it is an addiction, right? Like, I mean, it's great to have those out there and have that real-time information, but it is completely counter to my kind of model of hunting, which is aggressive. To be aggressive, to get in there smart, but be aggressive in that same
and it's
mindset.
It's to the point where you almost like you will go and hunt eventually and see something, and you almost want to deny that it's happening. You're like, no, if it's not on camera, it's not happening.
I know,
and we know that's not true.
Yeah. Let me solve your problem right now on that. All right. Number 1, cell camera info is old info. Number 2, I've shot 5 booners and never got a picture of any of them. I was on that 200-inch buck for 2 years, and I only ever got 1 trail cam picture of him, and I had trail cams all around his bedding. I glassed him in the summer, and he would actually loop around my trail cameras like he knew they were there.
Holy balls.
And
that's crazy,
I ran cell cameras all this year, man, and I was always a step behind on some of those bucks. Like, you got to anticipate what they're doing before they do it, and that data is just old. And it's only a 30-yard glimpse into what's happening in the woods. So
I think that's the problem, man. Is like we get so reliant, and I'm speaking for myself, right? I'm guilty of it more than anyone, but I become so reliant on getting a deer, or even like in some of my farms, like I've got a certain 5-year-old or whatever that I'm going to chase, and then I just don't get pictures of them, right? I get pictures of the 3-year-olds and the 2-year-olds and stuff, and so I just don't hunt. That deer's there, right? We know he's there. He didn't just pick up and move because he shows back up. You get another picture of him 4 days later or 3 days later or whatever. So again, that's where it's so hard, because if I look at from the advent of cell cameras, the number of days I purely hunt, right, a year has dramatically decreased, and not because I'm being more successful, but because I'm being more cautious, which again is against my normal style.
Yeah. Even running cell cams, I still hunt every day I can. Like you said, that buck's there. It's your job to go find him. So if he shows up even at night, I can calculate about how far they move by the hour and kind of backtrack him the bedding based on time, the timestamp or whatever. But if it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, I mean, he's moving a really long ways. He might not be bedded anywhere close. But if he's one with that, I'd say 10 or 11 o'clock at night window, then you can probably get on him pretty easy. You just got to go out there and get after him. So I think the cell cams can do that, because I kind of had it happen to me a little bit what you had happen. I was more looking at photos every day. It was pissing me off, man. I would go and hunt, and then I'd leave, and then the buck would show up the next day, and I'd be pissed all day long because I hunted yesterday and not today. I'd be at work, man, and get pictures of these giants, and I'm mad as hell at work because I got to work and I can't hunt. And it really messes with you mentally, I think. I think just going and hunting and getting after it, man, still the best way to go.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to throw you under the bus either.
No,
I'm just as guilty as. No, I already did it. So. I wanted to bring it back around and say I'm just as guilty.
Yeah.
But I think you guys are both maybe on extreme versions of the opposite spectrum, where I'll say, I've not experienced, and this probably has a lot to do with where we're hunting.
Habitat
different
types.
Terrain types. Deer will cover different amounts of distances and this and that. On my farm in Ohio, there's maybe only been one deer over 6 or 7 years that we killed that I didn't know was there. Had at least one picture of. And we run a lot of cameras. That's the point of trying to inventory them. But and I think that's a good thing. From a management perspective, this would be maybe speaking more to private land, where if you're trying to, or even a goal-oriented person try to kill a certain age class, it helps to have a picture, to know that something's there, to be able to look at it and say, that's that buck, as opposed to, is that a 4-year-old, is that a 5-year-old? Obviously a difficult thing to do on the fly. But the extreme negative effect that it can have is, I think, keeping you out of the woods. And we know that definitely happens when we do eventually go hunt and you see, oh, I saw this buck 3 times in daylight and didn't get a picture of him any of those 3 sightings. Back to what you said, it's a 30-yard window in a woods full of his domain. So it's probably somewhere in the middle. You want to try to get pictures if you can. That'll help you make the decision, but you have to keep that from over-influencing your strategy in hunting them.
I think the biggest thing, which all 3 of us would agree, is I got to know he's there. Like, I'm not hunting a ghost, right? We've all probably spent time hunting a certain deer that maybe we didn't get pictures of, or we saw him last year. We hope he's in it. But you eventually feel like you're hunting a ghost, right? Seeing him in person, seeing him in a field in the summer, getting a picture of him, one of those things at least, confirms, like, okay, I'm not freaking crazy, right? Like, this deer actually exists. I do have a chance of seeing him. And I think that, Rendell, it kind of sounds like that is your style. Like, as long as you get some confirmation of that deer is there, he's the caliber you're looking for, whether it's in the summer, a trail camera picture, whatever, then you feel confident enough to hunt him.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes I go off other things too. I'll go off late season sign, like a rub size. The 175 and something I shot last year, I just went off. I found one big giant track when I was postseason scouting with my buddy. We're out shed hunting, and I cut like this massive buck track, and I followed it back in this marsh. And I was like, oh, he's going to be bedded back in that bay back there. And I just mentally noted it, didn't really even scout it, left, and then came back in October. I think it was like the 12th or something like that. And then I just I scouted my way in, and I set up on that buck because I know those mature bucks like that, like to lock in an area. And then I shot him at 5 yards when I was 9 foot up in the saddle. I mean, he came right out. I seen him bedded in the bay. I could see his antlers out there flopping around. And then he got right up and came to me at last light, and I smoked him. So, I mean, you don't have to have a picture every time. You can go off tracks or other buck sign like that.
Don't feel too bad. It's Iowa.
I know.
Keep it in perspective. Jeremy's over here kicking himself.
God.
I gotta keep him.
Well, but I guess what's kind of interesting, because we're at the, it's January now, right? People are going to be listening to this. It's January 9th or whatever. I do, and I know we are, even though we're hunting private, we will go on public land that borders us or cover as much ground as possible. Now is an unbelievable time to be out in the woods. I think a lot of people are worn down from the season, and so when this time comes, they just kind of, whatever, do nothing until maybe they shed hunt once or twice, or maybe they turkey hunt. Like, other than that, like, it's like a nothing until July type of thing. But I have to tell you, the January, February, and even early March timeframe, to be in the woods and see it at its, like, the bare bones of the woods, and still be able to identify sign that was from this season and potentially cut a track or find a shed or whatever. That intel is invaluable. Even if you don't hunt that area, just being out there and re-honing your skills as a woodsman for deer hunting is so critical, I think.
I was going to say the woodsmanship, just knowledge of the terrain, even more than, yes, I think info in terms of sign can reveal itself at that point. But just knowing how the land lays and having like a mental picture when the season comes back around of, I don't have to go up into that bed. I know what that looks like.
Yeah, I know what it is.
I know I found those beds, they're facing this way on this wind. He can see me here, or whatever. It helps you to make those decisions.
Like when I find a mature buck bed, you'll know it. When you lay in the bed, I'll actually lay in the bed.
Yeah.
And when you look out and you're like, how in the hell could I ever kill this deer? That is the bed you need to pay attention to, because that's going to be the mature buck. Because when they're almost bulletproof, man, it's going to be a giant or like a really old buck. And then I really pay
it's spiritual, isn't it? Like to find a mature buck bed, like it's almost like finding an antler. It's like, this is a piece of him. This was the puzzle piece that I didn't have before. And here I am standing in it, learning from it, observing from it. Yeah. And ultimately, when you kill that thing, it's like, dude, that was a major piece of the puzzle.
You almost laugh about it, because you have to be in there and be like, smart son of a bitch, man. You know, like, I mean, that you've got anybody, and we've kind of talked about this before, the ability to hunt, not just kill, but the ability to hunt a mature buck in his element is, first of all, it's an amazing opportunity. It's why we encourage people to try to experience it at some point during your hunting career, to pass 3-year-olds and try to kill a 4 or 5-year-old or 6-year-old buck. But it's also because you get in those places and, damn, dude, you have to have respect for these animals. The conditions that they live in, the way that they have to survive, the way that they have to outsmart not only you but other hunters. Like, there are so many things working against these animals, and they just find ways to survive. They just do. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane, man. Like, I got the highest respect for big bucks, and I'm blessed to harvest the ones I've had, and I'm still even blessed, like you said, just to chase the giants that I don't get. And when you're going after the upper echelon of bucks, man, you better be okay with eating tag soup, because I don't care how good you are. No matter how good you are, they're going to kick your ass sometimes. It's just the way it is. You know?
And I think that there's nothing wrong with it. I would say that the majority of hunters have an issue with eating tag soup. At the end of the season, they will consider the season a failure if they do not fill their tags.
Well, dude, that pressure is real too. Like, this season was a perfect example for me. I was hunting this deer in October.
Yep.
And, while I didn't have him in daylight on camera and hadn't seen him in person, I felt like there was a chance. I was like, man, I'm the only one that's, I know what draw he's coming out of, and I was hunting him. And when we had that warm spell in November, because I'd killed November 3rd the year before, that date was rolling around. This buck kind of had disappeared on me. We had poor weather. We had Kansas coming up. Ultimately, the cherry on top of that, beast I was sitting on there was that I was in a car wreck.
Sure.
And so I got frazzled by that. And so I had all these things, and I'm like, I started to feel the pressure. And while I am happy, I shot a 4-year-old buck.
Yeah.
Which I think at the time was the goal.
Yeah.
I kind of had this goal. Like, for the first time in a while, I had this one deer that I was like, man, I want to chase that deer. And it didn't take long for him disappearing and for these other factors to set in that I changed changed my mind, or I was willing
your
to
goals change.
I was willing to entertain alternatives. And so
that's a tough thing, man. It's because listen, we're hunting, right? The goal of hunting is to go out there and kill something. Like, I mean, that just is it. But as you, I don't know, not mature necessarily, but as you just evolve as a hunter, you know, some of my best seasons, I ate my tags, but it's because I had epic chases with deer that, you know, I would not have been satisfied with anything but that deer. And so at the end of the year, I would have rather have not punched my tag and just had every last second to the sunset on the last day of the season to chase that deer than to settle for anything else.
No, I definitely get it. What I think doesn't help is social media pressure, Facebook, Instagram. You see guys all over the country, man. Feeds are just piling up with bucks they shot. You know, everybody's high-fiving them. They got their glory pics, and you're like, oh, man, you got that little bit of pressure. Your buddies are messaging you. You know, I got guys all over the country that listen to podcasts I do, and they message me and be like, what the heck, man, where's your giant? You know, and you're like, dang it.
Well, yeah, dude. But, I mean, take one look at our feeds that they basically call us a bunch of frat boys that don't even sit in the woods, you know? And so the first thing you want to do is go out there and slam a good buck and be like, you know, F you, brother. Yeah. So, but I mean, I do think somebody posted it the other day. I saw they were like, you know, what kind of technology do you think has changed hunting the most? And people were talking about cell cams and rangefinders and crossbows. And frankly, I think it's social media. You know, whether you throw YouTube into that mix from a content and education and information. And I'm not saying all of that is good information, right? I think the influence that has been put out there, the worst is the bad information. There's so much of it out there that is just opinionated bullshit, essentially. But to the average guy who is just trying to be better at what they do, they stumble on it, and this person is supposed to be an authority, right? So how do I know that it's not true or that it's misinformation?
So I taught myself how to hunt. My dad didn't really hunt or anybody like that. I just got into it and went out in the woods and made millions of mistakes and did a bunch of dumb crap. And I got into that. You listen to bad information from random fringe you meet, TV shows, people you run into somewhere at a trade show, or you know, or it's an illusion too. Like, they're hunting in a different situation than me. You know, they got
for sure
a managed 5,000 acre ranch and redneck blinds, and I'm a poor ass school teacher that's out here on public land. You know, you got to really watch. Sure. So what I learned to do is, if I hear something that is interesting to me, I'm going to go challenge you in the woods. I'm going to look at it postseason, or I might wing a day of my season during the end season thing and go try that theory and see if it holds weight to me. I'll check my trail camera. So I really look into what people say. I don't just take everything as the gravy train.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, because, you know, as you start to talk about the type of hunting, I mean, given it doesn't matter if you're in Iowa or Ohio. I mean, the bulk of the season is no more than 90 days. You know, I mean, that's just how it is from October 1 to the end of December. Sure, you've got some late season opportunities in January and in Ohio into like first week of February.
Almost 4 months, yeah.
But I mean, like, you know, like this year, most of our bucks in Ohio are shedding out. Like, so it's not even an opportunity. So you got 90 days, and I think going back to the aggressive and the pressure and using cell cameras talking you out of hunts, at some point, everybody during a season feels some sort of pressure. If it's time availability for work, if it's, you know, hey, I know that I've got a trip coming up, so I'm not going to be able to hunt the next week of the rut. Everybody's got some sort of pressure that comes in. Gun season is looming, and so bow's going to go out, guns coming in. I think that, you know, you have to really look at yourself as kind of your own little box, right? And all of these different factors that are affecting the way that you hunt. You can't worry about as much about how other people are hunting, because frankly, we're never going to control them. I mean, Jared and I bitch about it all the time, where it's like, man, I wish those people weren't dropping a corn pal across the line and shooting every 3-year-old that I'm trying to not shoot. But the reality is, it doesn't matter what we say to them. It's going to continue to happen unless they move or we buy it or whatever. Like, it's not going to change. So when you look at your own box of here's all the factors that I can control myself, there's going to be a ton of shit that I can't control that is going to have a negative impact on my hunting. But when you look at your own box, figure out those opportunities of hunting. And I will say the first thing that I'm hoping I do better in 23 than I did in 22, let's call it my deer hunting resolution, is don't listen to my freaking cameras. Like just hunt smart, but hunt aggressive, and just get out there once I know that there is a buck that I'm actually going to be after that exists on that piece of property.
Do you know the thing that has helped me the most alleviate that pressure? Because you really, the most fun that I have hunting, right now is when I'm just living it. I mean, you know how euphoric I am. Like in September and October, I'm like, dude, this is just amazing. Like all the opportunities are ahead of us, and surely that dwindles and then falls off steeply as soon as gun season starts. And but the best way that I personally have found to remedy that is to maximize the opportunities. And so that even, late in the season, there's still, plenty left there. Probably alternative to that or where I came from was like I had a fairly limited opportunity, more than some people.
Yeah.
But I had this one farm to hunt, and I would bank my whole season on this. And as deer would get killed, or as time would pass, things would happen, I'd be like, what else? Now what? Now what am I going to do? Like the pressure really is on to get these things, to get my goal achieved.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made it a point of, for me, what that meant was getting more opportunities. That meant drawing tags in other states. That meant getting more access to ground in my primary state. And so now I've manicured all of these opportunities. And so while I just told you I still experience pressure to get the thing done, it's a much more enjoyable experience because I've got options.
Yeah.
Cultivate was the word I was looking for.
Well, and that's where, and call it like a weird envy almost. Like I am envious of people who only hunt public land, to the point of, if I was only dedicated to public land, I'd be doing what Rendell's doing, which is have tons of spots, have like go in and be aggressive, blow it, and go to the next one and be aggressive. But because I've invested a lot of money also in properties, I don't want to do that, because I don't want to, I've got one property that I've invested money into. And so what's cool about some of the places that I hunt, in fact, my Ohio farm, my Kentucky farm, both border fairly large chunks of public land. And so what I've started to do more is I've actually put more time in scouting during even the season on those public lands, because I'm not worried about if I blow it. Frankly, my stands are where I'm hunting are closer to my border anyways. But I'll go and I'll extend myself into some of these to see what's out there, to see some of these bedding areas that are out there, to see what these oak flats look like. Are they producing acorns? Where I don't necessarily need to do that on my property because it's one and the same habitat, right? They're within several hundred yards of each other. So I think that if people are listening to this, not everybody's got public land that borders there, and there's disadvantages to it as well. But I like it because, I've had plenty of times, like I hunt in Kentucky next to Daniel Boone National Forest. It's tens of thousands of acres of public ground. And there are some giants in there, but they're buried. And so, on occasion, I'll pull them out onto my private, and I'll see a buck that I've never seen before, and it's the biggest deer I've seen all year. There's also times where I'll go in onto that public 1.5 miles deep during shed season and find, like Rendell said, a giant rubber, cut a huge buck track. And it's like, man, I need to put a camera here, and I probably need to come back and at least hunt this one time during October or during the rut or whatever it might be. And I think that I think we have gotten worse as a hunting society in terms of our abilities to be mobile. Right. And which is crazy, because you think of like what saddles and light hang-ons and everything else have done for us to be a mobile hunter. But I think that people are so rooted because the biggest fear, again, is just screwing up. And that's human instinct, right? Nobody wants to screw up. But Rendell, I think to your point, I think probably most hunters learn the most valuable lessons they've ever learned in hunting from a screw up.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I learned more I can watch any show, read a book, talk to anybody, but going out and getting that real life in the woods experience and knowledge and be like, oh, I screwed that up, I'm never going to do that again. And you have that innate feeling in your gut, like someone just punched you right in the balls, man, and you folded up on the ground, then you're never going to do it again because you're like, oh, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life, and it hurt, man. So you're going to remember that, it's like it automatically just goes in your memory bank. So like I'll catch myself moving through the woods and all of a sudden my brain will just go off and be like, oh, don't do that, you dumbass. You know what I mean? And then I'll be like, oh yeah,
dude,
I remember that.
I think
and then you keep moving through, and it's like you're never there. No matter how much you hunt, how good you are, how much experience, you are never the ultimate predator in the woods. You're always going to make errors, make mistakes, and you're never as good as you think you are. I mean, I do a lot of dumb crap, and I'm like, what in the heck am I doing? Like I was a rookie right there, you know what I mean? And then it's just, I don't know, man. I take it super serious, but I kind of need to have fun too, because it can be a grind. You just get a little bit burned out. But
for sure,
like this year, what hurt me on that, there was that Big 10 in there too that I sent you the picture of with that Mega 8. What hurt me was I didn't postseason that spot. I found that spot later as the season opened, so I didn't get to know the area as good as I should have. And the deer were doing a lot of things that I wasn't expecting. There was like some drainages in there, and it was more of a terrain type I wasn't used to. It was almost like flat out west, wide open. You could see forever, like a mile. And they were just out there in the drainages and these little CRP flats and navigating that with no trees. Like I threw the kitchen sink at these damn deer. And as I was moving around and getting super aggressive, I mean, I'd move in right on them, right where I thought they were bedding. I went in at 1 o'clock in the morning and hung on this drainage right over this buck bed, just hoping, he would come back. But he never showed up. And then you're like, God, what's tipping this buck off to what I'm doing? Because they're always a step ahead of me. Just going through that and a buck that size, man, I learned more than just me walking out in the woods in 2 days and shooting, some random booner somewhere, So I think that'll actually set me up for next year, because now I'll go in there, scout the living hell out of it. It'll drive me. I'm going to learn that area. I'm going to get on that buck a little bit sooner. He's going to be even bigger, man. So if you eat tag soup, man, it's like, all right, the buck's going to be even bigger. And my story is going to be more awesome next year if I actually harvest him, I mean, there's a lot of things you can look at for failure or success, but I don't know, any day you're in the woods, hunting's better than anything else in life to me anyways.
Do you think you'll find that deer sheds? Do you think you know where he's hanging still?
Man, getting on all that private property is really hard to shed hunt.
Yeah.
And I'm not actually a shed hunter. I think it's a waste of time. I'd rather just go scout my ass off than go look for sheds, honestly.
That's an interesting point, because I know a lot of guys that will say, well, yeah, I spend a ton of time, in January, February, March in the woods shed hunting. I almost think, and don't get me wrong, anytime I'm in the woods during those time frames, I'm always looking for a shed. But if you're 100% focused on just finding sheds, I think you miss a lot of details that probably you could be absorbing at that time.
Yeah, you're just looking at the ground. You're walking places you never even hunt. You're out in food sources, random stuff that doesn't matter. Yep. I'm in the woods looking at terrain features, wind mapping, looking at access, rubs, scrapes, beds, and I will find sheds. I won't find 100, but I might find 30 or 40 sometimes when I'm back in those bedding areas and stuff, roaming around.
Yeah. So I think that's an important part, Rendell. And I mean, it seems like common sense, but I know a lot of people are super skeptical of it. You definitely are jumping into those bedding areas in this postseason and really with no fear. Like, hey, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to cruise this thing, I'm going to learn it, I'm going to understand it, and not thinking like, maybe I'm educating him or this is going to screw something up. No care in the world.
I would take a dump in a buck bed. I don't care, man. It ain't gonna hurt.
Did I send you those pictures in October, Rendell? of the serial
Yeah,
shitter?
you did. That's why I said that, because I remember the photo. She sent me.
I did have deer hit that scrape after the fact. They just mushing it
Yeah,
in.
man.
That's
Just,
so
just,
funny,
just waffle
dude.
stomping it.
Buck
Just put
comes,
a big steamer right in that thing,
yeah.
man. Whatever, dude.
he comes walking through, steps in, and he's like, "Son of a bitch."
I know, right?
He's like, I'm going to get that guy. I'm going to go rub all over his wife's trees.
You'll get him on trail camera. He's got toilet paper on the bottom of his hoof, like walking through.
That's hilarious.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you do, man. Roll around in them.
Yeah.
When I find that buck bed and I lay in it and I look out, man, I'll hang like an orange hat or a coat in it, and I'll walk out, see what tree I need to be in, like how far away can this buck see. And then you look around, because October, I'm an early season guy. I like to get right out the gate and just get on them, because I think they're a lot more because it's just bed to food every day early season. So you'll have all the foliage to help you out, but it's nice to know like how far he can see if you're hunting him a little later into the rut, maybe before he starts getting, kind of crazy, and they kind of blow out after like the first or second week of the rut. They leave to go chase doe somewhere else. But
so your mindset is very early, like bed food. You're hunting a patternable deer versus something where I'm just going to be in there and I think I'm in the rut spot that he's going to cruise through.
I absolutely hate rut hunting.
I'd
rather stay home than go hunting the rut. That's just my experience, because those mature bucks are just out there running everywhere. Can't pattern them. They're just following the does. I mean, you got to switch it up. I struggle because all my big bucks leave, and then I got to go run around. So I'm more just freestyling during the rut, man. I'm just out there getting it, whatever random buck. But I'm in the mindset that I want to be tagged out before the rut gets here. Then I can go hunt out of state somewhere and have some fun, because I'm not leaving Iowa, man, until I'm tagged out. Like, I don't really care.
I think that's probably an interesting take from an Iowa public land perspective, because I would assume there's a lot more pressure come last week of October into November from non-resident hunting as well. Whereas, maybe in those first few weeks of October, I won't say you have it to yourself, but a lot less competition in the public woods.
Yeah, the first 2 weeks of November, everybody pours in, and no offense to anybody, but man, they hunt the wrong winds. They're blowing wind all into bedding areas. They're walking through. Like, I'll have a giant in there, and the guy's just all up in it, man. Doesn't even have a clue that giant was there, and that giant's gone.
Well, and you have to wonder, is that a guy who is listening to this thinking, well, yeah, I'm hunting aggressive, and meanwhile it's like, no, dude, you're hunting stupid, or is it just somebody who's completely oblivious? Because I think it could be either way.
I think a lot of guys are just oblivious. They're more old school hunter style, and they're not into like the buck bedding mobile game. And when you're out of state hunting, I will say the buck bedding game is hard. Like 100%. If you're not there postseason scouting, like I'm going to try to draw Kansas and hunt Kansas and Iowa this coming year. Like I'm going to go there at least 3 weekends to Kansas and postseason scout to help me out.
Yep.
But if you're just diving in and never been somewhere, I mean, you're going to screw a lot of stuff up. You're just going to I would just hunt on sign. But the rut guys are hunting off just like pinches, funnels, more terrain features.
Based.
They don't really care about bedding and crap like that. Like they totally ignore that stuff.
I agree.
I think a lot of people take for granted the advantage that comes from living, in the area that you hunt.
Huge.
I get to experience a little bit of it just because I spend so much time at my parents' farm in Ohio. But at the same time, significantly less than like my dad spends there. Mm-hmm. It's just like every time I go out there, I learn something. Mm-hmm. Just from driving past an area, just from being there. Living in the same approximate area as these deer that you're chasing. We really struggle, I think, out of state, not knowing any of that. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's plenty of local, even non-hunters that observe things that would give us an advantage that we just missed. We have cameras there. That's the best thing we have going for us. Mm-hmm. And we can read sign, and we could do this and that. But I mean, dude, how many deer get killed as a result of? I've been seeing them in that backfield. I just went out.
Sure,
and he was coming there, and
and I mean, we've built it up over years for trends. Like in a state like Kansas, I've been hunting there since 2013, basically, and only didn't draw 1 year, you know, and so the first few years you're completely flying blind. After 7-8 years,
Sure.
now you're becoming more familiar with the area, as long as your time frame stays consistent. But yeah, I think that's a big piece of it. It is interesting because it doesn't matter what mapping tool you use. You know, I'm very big on studying maps and identifying areas because you only have so much time in the day to get out there. But to say, like, here's an area I want to focus on, I'll walk right to it, and then I'll start really trying to work through that area to understand the sign and terrain. But, it is funny how, like you said, Rendell, a lot of guys will look at it and say, okay, boom, there's a pinch, and I'm just going to hunt it. And I think that, in theory, if you're limited on time and out of state, that makes sense. But if you've got time, when you do that, understanding what's around you is almost more critical than in saying, yeah, that's a pinch point. Anybody can look at that and understand it's a pinch point. But, like, why would a deer use that? What direction are they coming from? Where are they going to? Hell, if they're coming through there at 1 a.m. every night, that doesn't mean shit, right? Nothing's going to succeed. So I think it's really interesting when people start to look at that and say, well, yeah, I study maps a lot. This is what I'm looking for terrain. That's step one. But then going in and understanding what is, related or in context to that, I think is probably more important.
If we can, I'll set that up like a question for you here, Rendell, and I don't want to get off the podcast here without really honing this one in, because this seems to be like the critical decision is like a lot of it starts with, like you said, studying maps or previous, knowledge of deer in an area, something that keys you into to go in and scout and hunt a certain spot. And I'm talking maybe specifically about like a hanging hunt or even like an initial scouting adventure. What is it, and I think all these mistakes and experiences that we're talking about allow you to hone in going too far versus not going far enough. Like, where is the exact spot? I mean, dude, I know how many times has that made or broken the hunt, based on I'm pushing in, I want to get close enough based off of my knowledge of the sign I'm observing along the way, but how many times do we go too far? And then the opportunity is shot. What is it that's like makes that final decision, and knowing how critical that is? Like, that is the tree. I'm going to get in that tree and I'm going to be successful with it.
Man, that's a tough question.
And we've all dealt with that, right? Like that exact moment of like, am I too far? Do I keep going? Am I too far? Do I keep going?
I think it's just gut instinct, man. Just woodsmanship. I like to be 100-yard bubble, man. I feel like that buck, you're in his bedroom 100 yards or less. So sometimes I skirt that 100, and it all depends on. There's so many situations in the woods, all right, that I can't put one thing on any overall situation, because you got to factor in terrain type, time of year, vegetation state, leaf cover. Is that buck bedded there based on the wind, sight? Because a lot of big bucks bed based on sight more than the wind sometimes.
Well, in October, sign, right?
Yeah.
Has to be.
Yeah, or like the parking lot. They're watching the parking lot a lot of times. They got the wind in their favor, but they're still watching the parking lot. How is it windy? Is it wet? Is it dry? Because if it's crunchy leaves in the hill country, man, I'm going to back way off, because that deer's going to hear me. If I got 20-mile-an-hour wind, I'm pushing in even more than I normally would. If I got rain, man, you get rain in hill country, boy, I'm on them, man. I'll get 50 yards away and set up if I can. What's the wind doing? Is it swirling really bad when you're dropping the milkweed? Is it a thermal hub, or is it a straight line ridge? I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into that one Pacific area that you need to know. That's why just scouting will tell you, I think, for me, once you get experience, what I think I can get away with. And still sometimes, man, I push it. Like, maybe that buck's not moving more than 50 yards because he's got acorns. That's the hardest thing I find, is when the acorns are down. He can get right out of his bed and move a foot and feed till dark and move off. So you got to look at secondary food source. I'm a big secondary food source guy. I'm looking more at the secondary food than I am the primary food. And then I'm more focused on that because that's probably going to be in a staging area in that little 100-yard bubble.
Yeah, I think that's a
And
really
that'll
good
kinda-
point. Because I think a lot of people,
A secondary food source like what?
well, like close acorns, closer browse, things that are on the way to more of a destination food source, whether it's a large food plot, ag, whatever that might be. Depends on your territory.
Honey locust, duck potato, red dogwood, a raspberry bush, maple leaves, honeysuckle when you get down more south. Man, there's all kinds of stuff that they love to eat that's not agriculture, and they need that stuff to live. Like a mature buck is gonna bed somewhere he has browse because he needs that to live. So if there's no browse, I'm probably blowing right through it, and I don't give a damn about it because a mature buck's probably usually not going to be there.
I think that's a really important thing because I think so many people, and especially private land guys like us, like we get hung up on the fact like, oh, well, we have this huge brassica plot or we've got this large standing bean plot or whatever it might be. And yes, there are obvious opportunities that we are going to catch those deer on those plots. And I think it also depends on landscape. Like when most of your deer are bedding in a 5 or 10 acre block of timber and it's surrounded by ag, odds of you seeing them in that ag are way better than when I'm hunting thousands of acres of timber that have one 10-acre ag field at the end. Like that deer is going to move and browse on either woody browse, forbs, acorns, whatever. He's eating all of that on the way to that little ag plot, and then he's eating all the way back to his bed.
I think to put a general rule on it, like the more often that you have a distinct difference or a distance of travel between certain points of interest, which obviously would be your bedding area and your food sources, the easier they're going to be to hunt. Whereas, in my farm as an example of every tree is an oak tree, you know what I mean? And so when them acorns are down, like there's no way. Like people talk about patterning oaks, and I've been in woods where that could be possible. Okay, there's a handful of them here adjacent to a bedding area. That doesn't happen where I'm at. Like if the oaks are down, good luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck. They're out there in the woods somewhere.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, some bucks will long line too. A lot of guys overlook that. I've had bucks move 2 miles to a primary food source, and they're leaving in daylight way earlier than a lot of bucks that are just moving a couple 100 yards. So to that, if I'm postseason scouting, I'm probably going to know how close I can get already because I have the bed set up where I looked at it, and I'll get in the tree too. That's another reason I hunt low. The lower in the tree you are, the less that buck's going to see you when you're climbing up because he's not going to skylight you. And he's got cover when he's in his bed usually. And if you're 30 foot up, man, he's just going to look up and be like, man, that's a giant dude up in that tree. So if you stay that 8 to 12 foot, you got all that low cover early. Even late, man, I hunt really low. I might hunt 5 foot off the ground late season. It don't matter to me. Like last night, I laid out in the middle of an open bean field, just a big blob out there, and I had deer walking by me at 50 yards. I mean, I get crazy with my stuff, but the last available cover, you think that buck's not going to see you. And how you approach the bed too, I like to come in from the side because a lot of bucks bed with the wind over the back and they're looking out. So if you come into the wind, that buck's staring right at you. So I like to come in from the side wind because he's not looking directly in that direction usually, and he's not smelling you. And just the off winds are a little bit better, I think, because that buck's got confidence, nothing's there, and he's going to move a little bit better for you, I think. And I don't know. I think a buck usually only has like 3 exit routes usually. So, I mean, there's like a 33% chance.
Right.
If he's there and you didn't mess it up, you might see him or kill him if you got the setup right. But the one other thing, if you're hunting really aggressive and you're getting way back in there, you better mentally prepare yourself for not seeing deer. You're not going to see the 20 does on the food plot every night and all these young bucks because you're isolating yourself to hunting mature deer where they live. And they live a little bit different places or back further than the rest of the deer. So you're just not going to see that many deer at all. So you got to get off of that trained mindset, because a lot of guys are field edge hunters and they transition into this. Because I did the same thing. I used to be a field edge hunter and I'd get pissed off. The deer would make it after dark and I'd see lots of does and little bucks, but not stuff I wanted to shoot. And I'd always get these pictures of the giants and be like, oh, what the hell, man? So now that I'm pushing back, I'm not seeing like tons of does and little bucks anymore. I might see like some mid-range bucks go by me. But when I see a buck, it's going to be the one I usually want to shoot, or it's going to be a damn good one that I'm going to have to second guess myself that I'm an idiot and I let it go by me. So
I think that's a really important part of this. And I don't know. I can tell you, I probably have had this discussion with 10 people over the last 3 weeks. We all, as hunters, want to see deer, right? That's like, it is rooted in us that if we go out, it kind of like the same with the filling a tag in the season. If we go out and hunt a place and we don't see any deer, that it's a failure. The reality is, especially if you're trying to hunt a mature buck, the more deer that you see when you're hunting a mature buck, I think the decreased chances of actually seeing the buck you're after. Because that deer just does not want to be social. He likes to be by himself, unless it's when he's still bachelored up super early. Like if you're hunting Kentucky velvet in like first week of September, I get that. Or super late season when it's like you're on a food source and it's the food source. Other than that, that buck does not want to be social. And we talked with Carl Miller about this. I still think the social interactions of deer is the least thing that we know about whitetail deer. We have no freaking idea inside of buck's mind, except for the fact that most of these big mature bucks are loners. They just want to be alone. They don't want to have to mess with other bucks. They don't want to be sparring with 3-year-olds. Like they just want to do their own thing. They want to survive and they want to breed, and they don't give a shit about anything else.
He's like your grandpa yelling at the kids to get the hell off his lawn.
That's exactly it, man.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah. And so I say that because I think people get super discouraged that they'll set up in a spot and maybe they don't see deer, or they get super excited and they set up in a spot and they see a ton of deer, a bunch of 2- and 3-year-olds, and you're like, all right, man, it's going to happen. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think when you start to encounter all these deer, the odds of encountering that mature buck are decreased. Most of the big mature bucks that I've killed on like these first sits, first kill type things, it is the only deer I saw. That's it. It's just him.
You know what else you usually see when you see a big buck? Is turkeys. Longbeards.
Really?
Have you ever noticed that?
No.
Yeah, a lot, especially like on an oak flat.
Yeah.
That'd be the main play. A lot of times, like when I've encountered a big buck, I haven't seen a lot of does, but there's usually a flock of gobblers that will come through like a half an hour, and then when that happens, I know.
Yeah,
I think there's some symbiosis there. They know.
Sure.
They know that those, and they'll follow them around. Those turkeys are looking for the same acorns that that the buck is. But to your point, dude, I think that can be one of the more detrimental things to people getting on a big buck is they think about how infrequently the everyday person sees deer, period. Especially in their natural habitat, like not across the road or something like that, or in a field. Yeah. To be able to see and observe a deer, it kind of restarts every year for most people. You're like, oh, okay, here he is. Look what they're doing. And, almost 90% of the time you hear people say, well, I was seeing deer. They were doing this primarily. And when you see them doing that, I think every deer that you observe makes it harder to perceive or believe that this mature buck would do something different. Yeah. And we see those, think about how many deer you see compared to how many mature buck sightings you see. Yep. It's maybe 5% of the time, if that. Yeah. And so when you finally do see them, there's almost like an element of disbelief that how he's doing something totally different than these other deer were doing. And it's like, it's really hard, I think, to not get sucked into what you're seeing every other deer do and still trust your gut or trust the sign or trust what you know about the terrain to know that they're going to do something different in most cases.
I think almost as important to that, if not more important, and Rendell, you kind of touched on it in terms of like finding those secondary food sources, is I've had to walk through several areas where there were 2- and 3-year-old bucks, or 2-year-old bucks especially, just bedded in the wide open. Right. And I've walked right past them. I've bumped them. I've kicked them out because I know that mature buck's not going to do that, right? He's deeper, he's buried deeper, he's back in this thicket, he's all by himself. So I'll blow right through him,
and there's the aggressive confidence you're talking about.
I know. I'll bump does, I'll bump 1 and 2 year old bucks, and I don't give a shit. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, if people be like, "Oh, you spooked deer," I don't care. Like, I'm not hunting that deer, right? I'm again, to your point, where's that fine line? But I'll blow right through them. And I do believe there is some sort of hierarchy there as those deer get deeper into the terrain of, like, you know, those fawns and does will be right there next to the food source. And those 1 and 2 year old bucks will be a little deeper. And maybe they got cover, but it's not nearly like where that buck that you're after is bedded. He's in the best spot. He's there.
Yeah, I believe that wholeheartedly. And I've blown 10 does out of a spot and then have a booner come out 30 minutes later and I smoke him. So just because you blow those deer, I mean, coyotes are in the woods, bobcats. Sometimes the wind ruffles wrong and the does blow out. I mean, that buck does not have any damn clue what the hell just happened out there. Yeah, it might make him be a little later than normal to his pattern where he's going, because he's like, oh, maybe I should sit here tight. But I already pushed in like you are. I'm already past that point. So he's just running into me a couple minutes later and I'm smoking him. So you got to be okay with blowing deer out if you're hunting our style.
But the old school the old school mentality is don't. The moment you bump deer, you're dead, right? But they weren't hunting these caliber of deer, these age class of deer. They were hunting a buck or a decent buck.
I don't know where that came from. And not to pin it on any one person, and obviously, you know, they killed a lot of giant deer, but like for me, my generation, like it was that Midwest white, like Bill Wenke, admittedly, is a really conservative hunter.
Super conservative.
And he's a private land guy, obviously hunts the perimeter, and you know has tagged, you know, shot 3 bucks multiple seasons.
Don Higgins will tell you the same thing. Don is a very perimeter hunter. He leaves the core of the property to the deer. He hunts the perimeters, and he does not go in after
and they're
them.
super successful with that. And you know, maybe you know, at those guys' age, they've had opportunities to make mistakes like we're making now, to ultimately say, I don't need to make those anymore. I know what these deer are doing, and maybe there's something to that. But I know that my conservative nature came from Midwest whitetail influence. Stuff. It really did. And the reality is, like you said earlier, Rendell, I'm not hunting in Iowa. I'm not hunting a 600-acre farm in Iowa that's set up, and then it just isn't the case. And so I needed to break away from that and make some mistakes, hopefully find some success along the way, you know, to maybe get back to that someday.
Mine's been hunting timber. You know, that's cut my teeth.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
You got to look at who's saying what too, because it goes back to that public versus private.
Sure.
I mean, if I had the Bill Wenke, Don Higgins, if I had their land, unpressured food sources, redneck blind, or whatever you want it to be, I might not be as aggressive because I don't need to be.
Right.
I'm going to do whatever it takes to kill the deer.
Sure.
There's situations even on public where I'm getting a trail cam picture in daylight on the field edge on a cornfield. Why am I going to go tromping back 500 yards to his bed when he's showing up to the cornfield in daylight? So I think it's evolving to whatever I got to do to kill the buck is what I'm going to do. So sometimes I'll back off. Sometimes I'm only going halfway. And there's some things that will change situations, but the majority of the time I'm being crazy aggressive because I can. But you brought up the point earlier, you know, if you only have that one private land, you don't want to go rip raw and roaring in there and blow everything out. Then your neighbors are killing all your deer, even though your neighbors are probably still going to kill some of your target bucks just because bucks aren't going to stay there. They don't know what's landowner's name owns what, and bucks don't know private versus public either. They're just out there. So, I mean, it's all different scenarios and situations. I think, man, you can't really put apples to apples on any hunter. That everyone's different. Every situation's different. I noticed lately, everybody tries to match up hunter versus hunter. Who's better?
Yeah.
Almost. But really, everybody's scenario in life is different. Like a guy might hunt 90 days a year and the other guy can only hunt 2 days a week. Or public versus private.
Agree.
One guy's hunting primary food sources and the other guy's hunting buck beds. I mean,
right.
To me, I just don't give a damn what anybody's doing but me. Like, I just could care less.
Well, and
I'm
I think,
just going to do what I got to do.
I think that's where the envy, call it jealousy to a point. Like, there are a lot of things, like, if I'm hunting, like, I've got private land in Kentucky, but it's mountain ground. Like, I'm not in Western Kentucky. I'm not in ag country. And so if I can kill a mature buck on that ground, like, that is the goal, right? I don't care if he's 120 or 180. I'd love him to be 180. And then, when you see a guy who's got maybe a smaller property than that, but lives in Iowa or Illinois and it's private land and it's managed and he's killing 2 bucks that are 160 plus every year, it's like, holy shit, man. Like, what am I doing wrong? Well, and it's hard not to compare an apples to apples, even though obviously that's not what it is.
Well, and in fairness, there are a lot more extreme differences than guys who hunt bedding areas versus guys who hunt field edges, right? You've got in the most extreme case, guys are hunting traditional style bows, maybe running a gun on public land versus, there are states where you can bait. Ohio's one of them. The extreme opposite end is a guy with a rifle, and a cell cam and a bait pile and a blind 100 yards away. Those are obviously totally different things. And so you can understand, I think, why disagreements might occur or comparing might.
Well, it's the cultural thing too. I'm sure you've seen it. Obviously, Rendell, coming from the South to Iowa, like how I lived in Mississippi. I remember sitting there during gun season in November. It's 60 degrees, and I hear dogs bark, and they come blowing through chasing deer, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Meanwhile, I'm the pot calling the kettle black because I'm up in Pennsylvania doing deer drives at 7:35 opening morning, blowing through 5 guys wide. So are either of those wrong? No, it's just cultural differences of where you come from. And so what's changed though is historically the culture of the deer drive guy from Wisconsin, Iowa, Pennsylvania never even talked or heard about the guy in North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi doing dog drives, right? But with the advent of social media and everything, it's now right at my fingertips and my back door. So all of a sudden it's like, man, hunting deer with dogs, that's a bunch of bullshit. Meanwhile, I'm out there 7 guys wide, with the Orange Army blowing a hillside off. So it's so... What has happened, and this is why, we get on these rants, but we talk about the division in hunting so much. Frankly, there always will be a division because of what our backgrounds and cultures are. The hard part is when you're trying to hide that or blend it and say, we can't, we have to all be united. That's bullshit. It won't happen, right? The bow guy is always going to be critical of the gun guy. The guy who's doing dog drives is always going to say, let me do it. It's my tradition. It will always exist. We just have to figure out a way to coexist together. That's it.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. People will be people, man. We've been people since the beginning of mankind. I mean, it's not a pretty thing most of the time, honestly. Yeah. And for me, I just don't give a damn what people do. As long as you're doing it legally and you're not messing with my life or my hunting, I don't give a damn what you do. That's just my mentality. I got my worries. Like, if you're worried about what someone else is doing, you're not scouting enough or you're not looking at maps enough or something. Like,
I think though, Rendell,
that's simple, but for me, I just don't care. Like, if that's their thing, they can do it. I don't feel like I have the right to tell you what to do because I don't like it. Everyone has an opinion. You know what I mean? And most of them opinions.
So check this out, Rendell, though. I think that goes back to opportunity, right? Like you've got enough opportunity in Iowa on public land as a resident that it's not necessarily bothering you. But what if Iowa said, okay, we're going to take non-residents and you guys can all bait on public land. Go for it, right? That would probably drastically affect how you felt about that, right? Because you can still say, well, I'm going to choose not. I'm going to choose not to. I'm going to choose, I still prefer this. But if your odds of success goes from whatever it is now, 40%, whatever, to drastically reduces, you might feel like, oh man, like this resource, this opportunity that I had is all but taken away from me by these guys doing so lawfully.
Yeah, I mean, it would piss me off, but I mean, you've got to overcome and adapt. I mean,
you'd move. You'd find somewhere else.
Yeah,
right?
maybe move to Kansas.
Sure.
I don't know, but you can bait,
Sure.
you can bait there
Right,
too.
right. Well, and that's
So,
the
I
right that's the right answer, you know. But you would hope that it would move the opposite direction. You know, that the resource would be protected and preserved.
Well, I think that's the thing is like it. Even though let's say they made baiting legal everywhere, you could bait wherever you wanted. If the science could ensure that my resource wouldn't be damaged to the point of like truly affecting how passionate we are about the outdoors and hunting, then cool. I'm overcome and adapt, right? I think where the issue has been is there's been a lot of changes, whether it's, letting more people hunt, longer seasons, crossbows, enhanced. I mean, look at Iowa. Dude, at one point, I remember Iowa guys were walking around with beads at the end of their 20 gauges and slugs and buckshot. That's what they were hunting with. Now there's 1,000-yard muzzle loaders. Right. So yeah. I think what I look for is how are the states now responding to this enhanced technology that has made us more efficient and is affecting probably the resource, right? At that point, as hunters, I don't care if you're a crossbow guy, a gun guy, a bow guy, a trad guy, whatever, you have to step in and say, okay, we have changed, we have evolved to be more efficient killers. Have we changed and adapted the seasons, the bag limits, etc., so that the resource is not detrimentally affected? And I think good.
I think that's a different category than hunter versus hunter. That's that's where hunters need to come together, even though we're different, because that problem comes into the DNR is not managing
the
natural resources anymore. It's insurance companies that are getting big pockets going into these politicians, like people that have no idea about deer hunting or deer in general, probably never seen a damn deer in their life in the woods, right, are telling me that they're telling the DNR what to do. And the DNR's got all these degrees, but they can't do their job because some politician somewhere got a backdoor deal for millions of dollars for his campaigns from some insurance company to wipe out all the damn deer. So they don't care about me or any other hunter or any style of hunting. They just want to get rid of the damn deer. That's where we should put our frustration and anger. And that's what we should lead everybody to, as being united against, not hunter versus hunter.
Right. Well, dude, we've obviously are not against anybody hunting in any way that is legal. We're all for it. Even as much as we give guys crap, the crossbow guys during archery season and baiting, of which we do, it's all legal, but, and you said it just a minute ago, and I hate that it's gotten almost twisted or tainted, but you just said, man, I would do whatever it takes to get that deer killed. I think that that's a healthy approach. I feel like we are the same way. We choose to do it with certain weapons, but what if, if you were allowed to use these extreme methods that almost guarantee, and then remove your knowledge of what is possible for the deer herd. And so you're like, I've never seen a 3-year-old that's big. And so you can see easily how guys get sucked into legally killing, deer with these insanely effective methods in states that they've never been to. So I think that's where we're saying we're not blaming any hunter for doing something in a way that's legal. We're just saying.
Oh, no, I didn't think that. I was just saying in general. I was just.
Yeah.
It's
the guardrails we're given, right? We've had this discussion, and people have argued with us, and maybe I'm crazy, right? And that's fine. Like that's why it's a debate and a discussion on a podcast. But if Rendell, if somebody said, "Hey, Rendell, you can kill next year," you know what? Go ahead and kill 5 bucks in Iowa. If somebody told me I could do it, I would probably try to freaking kill 5 bucks in Iowa. Right? Because that's the guardrails that have been set out. So what happens, again, to your point, it isn't the hunter versus hunter. It's the hunter versus politicians and the hunter versus DNRs and things like that, there's a major disconnect, right? The bridge gap is huge to where we're all over here. And yes, we have our own debates and discussions internally, bait, crossbows, rifles,
all
whatever.
It is, dude, is when opportunity is prioritized over management of the resource. That's all it is.
And I think most states, I do think, and I don't know the guys from Iowa. Maybe at one time I knew some of them. I do think Iowa is still doing it correctly, regulated, hardcore from a non-resident standpoint. They are prioritizing opportunity, but it's still not at the expense of the quality of the hunting. I mean, that's what makes Iowa the Mecca. Is there's a restriction in place that makes it difficult to get in and hunt as a non-resident, and opportunities for rifle season outside the rut for residents. All of these things still keep that as a Mecca. Kansas has gotten a little loosey-goosey with their regulations. Still a great hunting state, right? Nobody's arguing that. But it definitely has there's been more demand or more attention driven to it. But a lot of these other states are purely opportunity driven. And I get that from a numbers standpoint. And that's obviously where funding comes from. But I have to believe that the resource starts to suffer at some point when you're managing purely at opportunity, right? The whole point is for us to have a balanced age structure in the deer herd. And if you're managing for opportunity, that is the complete opposite of a balanced age structure from a health standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, even I was kind of getting loosey-goosey. They added that high power late season. If there's any doe tags left over in the county, you can use high power rifles now.
Oh, really?
Late. Yeah, so there'll be a lot of shed bucks that get killed.
Wow.
And I've noticed the number of
Jared must have been
big bucks going down, man. There used to be a ton of 200s, 180s, those upper echelon bucks, and man, you don't see those as much now. It's a lot of damn work to get out there and be finding these big bucks. I'm telling you, it's not. There's a big gap in this age structure for some reason. But the upper echelon of these 200s, man, they're disappearing. It's not like it used to be for some reason. And I think
you're the third Iowa guy that we've heard that from in the past 2 weeks.
Yep. Well,
it's getting weird. It's getting tough out there. I don't quite know what's matching up for that, but the regulations with the straight wall coming in, and now we got this high power late season
long range muzzle loaders, which are a newer adaptation into there. You guys still don't allow crossbows, to my knowledge, though, unless you're
late season. You can
late season. You can.
Yeah,
overlapping with the gun season.
That muzzle loader, late muzzle loader, or whatever.
He's a muzzle loader. I can use a crossbow if I want to.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows.
or a Matthews, yeah.
One and the same.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out. When you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows, I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well, but for me, I'm shooting that RX-5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX-7, and I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt. We tell it like almost every week, but the whole point of this podcast is, number one, we want to meet guys that have the same passion as us, but it's also just people aren't talking about these things, and it's not to beat up on one group or the other or to cause division. It's the fact that in human society, you have to have debates and discussions, and you have to talk about things. If you don't, nothing's ever going to change. Nothing's ever going to get better. Nothing's ever going to come to a resolution, right? If everybody just shut their mouths, we'd be a disaster of a society. Now I think some people open their mouths too much, and people will probably comment and say, yeah, you guys, piece of shit. But that, whatever. That's their opinion, and they have a right to say so.
It comes with the territory of having an opinion. Yeah, it's something we overstep, and do we say probably stuff we don't mean a lot? I mean, it's like it's not like we plan these podcasts. It's just like whatever we're feeling at the moment in the conversation is what's spewing out. And so I think, we try to be diligent about retracting or refining our thoughts as we're going through it. And I mean, every guest that we have on gives a new perspective that like helps us change our minds.
Yeah.
Like even today was the first time I had considered
I think that's a great idea.
You know, and so that might nullify a lot of the things that I've said in the past. And so, I mean, dude, we're obviously just people, you know, trying to get better and stuff, and our conversations are just opinions. So
yeah, the bottom line, we care about the resource. We care about deer hunting. We care about whitetail deer,
and we care about deer hunters.
Yes,
a lot.
And that's what, you know. If anything comes across harsh, it's because that is the
we love you.
Yes, we love you.
It's because we love you.
Yeah, it's passion, man. If you're passionate about something, you're going to have that fire.
Yeah.
It's just natural. I mean, it's just the way it is. There was one thing I wanted to touch on really quick before we got off, because it popped in my head a couple times. Totally off subject. Sorry. Switching back to actual hunting. When I'm scouting and getting ready for the season, I wanted to touch on, I find as many bucks as I possibly can. If you're only finding one or two and you're being ultra aggressive, that's not a good plan. I like to find 10 to 20 bucks, and they might not be all upper echelon bucks, but that gives me, I can hunt every day because I have bucks on every wind. I'll even go find places on different winds on purpose to have places to hunt. So using the cameras, I'm getting a one photo. I'm trying to find as many as I can. That way, if I blow one out, I mess up, I go in too far, it's not like detrimental to me where I'm like brutally devastated that I ruined my hunt, because I can hop on to this buck 3 hours away that I found. And a lot of times, like I said, a new buck will show up I've never even seen on camera that might be bigger. So if you're going to do that style in public, I would really stretch yourself. And that's one thing that one photo comes into. Because I can't hunt a 4-hour radius and have 10 cameras in every piece of public. Right. So I got to stretch 100%. My cameras out to like 1 or 2. So I'm finding the best possible spot in that whole public land or 2, putting a camera there that I have faith in and rolling out. And then I'm doing that everywhere I go. And that way I'm usually kind of hunting by my camera too, because that's probably the spot I'm actually going to hunt or close to it. And then if the buck's not getting there in daylight, then like I told you, you know, I'll break off and then go find him. But it'll be a high percentage area where I know I'm going to get a picture. And if I don't, I'm probably not going to hunt it. But if it's a really good spot, I might, like you said, it's going to be in my mind like, oh man, I should try that one spot one day. Yeah. And if I don't have a good wind somewhere, I'm not on something, I might hop in there. But you want to really get a category of bucks going every year. Just keep adding and scouting new places and adding. Yeah. Then like now I got 11 years in Iowa, man. I got a huge category of public land, knowledge of it. I can get around pressure way easier. If somebody kills one of my bucks, all right, boom, on to the next. If somebody messes up your spot because they're dumb and hunt the wrong wind or whatever happens, just hop to the next spot, man. It'll keep you in the game way better than if you only got like a couple bucks. And you might have to drop off a 200 to hunt a 180 or a 150, or go, like if you're down south, you might have to hunt, you know, a 120 instead of a 140 or whatever you got going on.
I think that's an interesting point there, because I think that a lot of people, when you start talking about the multiple bucks and getting the picture, I was going to ask if you were looking at more of an inventory in terms of your camera setup, or, you know, I want highest possibility of a picture, but that's also probably the spot that I'm going to hunt as well. Yeah. That makes sense.
Options.
Yeah, and I think that's
options keeps the pressure off, keeps the morale high, keeps the
per what you said,
keeps it rolling.
You know, Iowa is one of the places. Yeah, it's Iowa, but it's also one of the least amount of public land availability in the United States. So I mean, the fact that you have the ability to still have all of these spots in Iowa that you could possibly hunt. Think of people in Pennsylvania, where we're in like the top 10 in terms of public land availability, or West Virginia or Michigan or Wisconsin or whatever. I mean, there's tons of public land. Yes, maybe you're not hunting the 200, 180 caliber type deer, but I do firmly believe, doesn't matter what state, I don't care if you're in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or you're in the big woods of Pennsylvania, if you want to find a mature buck in your state, you'll find one. They exist. Yeah. Every state. I don't care where you're at. Florida, screw you. Maybe you're in trouble. But other than that, like every other state, you pretty much like I've hunted in Mississippi. Yeah, just gators. I've hunted in Mississippi. There's plenty of mature bucks there. I've hunted Pennsylvania. I've hunted, Illinois. Like there are mature bucks in every state. Are they easy? No, that's why they got to be mature, and that's why they're such sought after animals. Is because there's not one around every tree, but you got to just put in the time, put in the spots, put in the resources, and I mean you could be successful. To be honest, it's your own fault if you're sticking to one place only, and you're not happy with the deer you have to hunt.
Yeah, and I would say that hunting aggressive, that's probably one of the biggest spots you're going to fail. If you get locked in on one buck so much that you put too much pressure on him and you don't venture off and hunt some other bucks in between. Because then, man, the season goes by really quick when you're locked in on that one buck.
Yes, it does.
You need to get out. I kind of got on that 180, man, and I even made that mistake. Like I'm stubborn son of a bitch. So like I stayed on him, man, was trying to get in there crazy. But in hindsight, I should have been really selective when I was aggressive and broke off, hunted some other bucks. And during the rut, man, I really put the screws to him when that's not a good time to be on one individual buck. I should have broke off and just went and hunted like I'm doing now. I'm just hunting now. Like I'm just bouncing around.
Right.
Over the weekend, I drove 2.5 hours and hunted places I've never even been to. I just looked on the map. I was like, that looks good. Yeah. And I just dove right in there and started hunting, which is crazy. But I mean, you got to be able to just freestyle, man. Think outside of the box. There's usually not one way to skin a cat, man. You got to be versatile.
Well, I think one thing too, let's say you do own property like Jared and I do, one thing that we've really adapted to because we don't want to blow that property out is we go to other states, right? So I know that's not feasible for everyone, but let's say you own property in Ohio, you can hunt public land in Kentucky. It's dirt cheap. It's over the counter. And so don't overpressure your one golden place in Ohio. If it's not there or it's not working or that buck's not there, go to Kentucky, hunt public land. Like be mobile in that sense. And frankly, I think you'll have a more enjoyable season because let's be honest, sometimes if you hunt one buck or one property over and over and over, dude, it takes a mental tear on your brain.
It's a grind.
This is going to sound crazy, but if you buy land in Iowa, I would literally rather hunt out of state all season, but put in some redneck blinds and put all standing food and only hunt late season because your bow tag rolls in the late season. And then you got the muzzleloader late and you got the landowner tag. And if you're the only place that's got food late season in Iowa, you're on a gold mine, man. You'll fill those tags quick and you'll have giants rolling in there if you got them.
Yeah.
If you got the bedding, you got the browse, you got the food. And then you got the box blind where you can stay warm when it's -20 out there and you're not freezing your nuts off like me in a saddle like a dumbass. I mean, my buddy's sending me texts. He owns private and he has a redneck blind. He's got a heater. He's like, oh, man, he's kicked back and I'm out there half dead, frozen, sweating ice. I'm like, come on, man. So that's the way I would do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of crazy, but I'd rather get it done in that little window and hunt out of state.
Yeah.
I go to state in September before Iowa opens just to get a warm up. You get kind of get in that groove.
Yep.
I was almost bummed I didn't tag out early in Iowa because I like to go, even though I live in Iowa, I like to go hunt other places. Like I go to Missouri, Nebraska. I want to go to Kentucky,
we love the Dakotas, man. That early season in the Dakotas is a blast.
September's muley time for us. It gives us an excuse to get in really good shape before the season, which obviously falls off. We're at the all-time low right now, but
we're fat pieces of shit at this point.
But yeah, I mean, it gives you a chance to chase bucks. And
I was going to the gym every day before season, man. Now I'm just a honey bun, man.
Bro, listen, I was putting 100 pounds on my back on a no joke, on a frame pack and going to Planet Fitness and getting on the stepper. I mean, I was like in the best shape of my life, and I haven't done a lick of cardio since September 1st.
Yeah, and now I'm just loaded with like Swiss cake rolls and coffee.
Yeah, I'm like 7 rolls and Diet Mountain Dew, man.
It's cyclical though. We're like those mature bucks. It's like we're full velvet all the way to shedding off and back at it.
Well, listen, dude, we appreciate you coming on and talking with us. We'll definitely have to, maybe we can catch up post scouting season. We'd be interested in seeing, anything that you find out new, some things you learned kind of when you got into these bedding areas here in the next month or two.
Or if we kill something in the next week.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, man, it'll be awesome. I'm going to try like hell.
That's it, man. Got to give it a hell till the sun goes down on the last day. There's still a chance.
That's right. Get her done.
That's it. All right, brother. We appreciate it, man. And awesome. Good conversation.
Fun stuff, man. That may be a long one.
That could be a record. Really funny, though. Like, I feel like the first thing I want to say is, but Rendell, you're from Iowa.
Yeah, you don't understand, silly child. Shut your mouth.
Oh, you have 20 deer bigger than 150 to hunt a year? Oh, yeah.
No. Rendell's the man, dude. We got connected through...
Yeah, how did that happen?
Funny enough, the same guy that introduced us to Andre.
Oh, really?
From Greene County. Yeah.
No.
I gave him an estimate on his property and stuff.
Yeah.
And we may sell it for him someday. So.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I just asked. I said, he was fairly well connected, and he's like, yeah, dude, there's this guy Rendell out of Iowa that's doing some really cool stuff, and
how about that?
some stuff we didn't even cover on the podcast today with like a truck he's got rigged up for hunting public land and stuff.
Dang.
So yeah. Anyways, I reached out to him, and we've been chatting for a couple months now, I think. And he, as he mentioned, he's a school teacher, and so his schedule's just tough.
Yep.
And he took today off.
Good guy, though.
He took today off to chat with us and to hunt this afternoon. So.
Oh wow, yeah. I was gonna say, wait a minute, you have to. Yeah, he's sick.
Sick day.
First of all, again, man, it completely a guy that just sees the right mindset with us. We have several of those as you start talking with, guys like Johnny Stewart and stuff. But dude just stayed up. I mean, moved to Iowa to hunt. It's just, what do you say? I just picked a town on the map that had a bunch of public land around it, and that's where I moved to.
It's
just
working out for him.
Really fun. Yeah, I mean, obviously killing giants. I think probably I would assume, just because I've watched some of his background stuff, one of the most in-tuned like stewards of mature bucks, meaning like he gets into these areas and he just breaks it down. Like he studies the area, breaks it down. Like he said, he gets in the bed, he puts hangs a hat in there, backs back up. How far can they see this way? Like the dude, I won't say overanalyzes it, but I mean, to your point, like how far do I push in? He knows.
Yeah.
Because he's done the homework, he's laid it out. All that deer has to do is follow the script. And I mean,
there's some commonalities between these big buck killers, I think, that I'm noticing, and they're just very down to earth, like get your hands dirty type of people. They just go in, make mistakes, learn from the sign that they're seeing or from whatever encounters that they're having, and apply it to the next one. Every one of them has had lots of challenges. Every one of them has killed, or had a lot of experience before getting to where they're at, which shows that it just takes time. And then eventually, I think you figure out that like it doesn't have to be a total mystery. Like that they're real animals living out there. They're laying real sign, and we can take advantage of it, and
yeah. And they're from Iowa.
And if you're from Iowa, it happens a little faster than
I was
most
like, wait
places.
a minute, Andre, Iowa.
There are. I mean, it's not an uncommon theme of people that move to Iowa to hunt giant deer. It seems to be where you do it.
Yeah, I do think that not a scary thing, but almost a little bit of a depressing thing is we hear it from Kansas guys. Now we're hearing it from a bunch of Iowa guys that the quality or the amount of quality, like big bucks, is not like it used to be. That there are for sure less gigantic 200 pluses in those states than there used to be, at least per what it seems.
You know what, though? I will say in states where there's no antler restrictions, I don't think that that's a genetic issue, which means that it could be recovered from in a matter of years.
Yeah, I think they're just high grading. They're just shooting young giant bucks.
Yep. So it's, it's salvageable.
Sure.
Right? With some regulations changes or whatever it is on a case-by-case basis, there is the opportunity still to have.
Do you think you ever have a goal of shooting a 200?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I've got to go. It's a goal now.
You feel like it's a realistic goal?
Yeah. Dude, I'm young. I got a lot. I mean, yeah. I got a lot of time ahead of me. Very nice. Yeah, we're talking to the right people here. So
very nice.
Yeah. Don't you?
Oh, yeah.
I think we all do kind of deep down, but whether it's it could actually happen or not. I don't know.
I've seen one with a bow in hand. One.
Yeah, dude, you were close.
I was real close.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll happen again.
Yeah.
But it's a rarity. I mean, it's there is something just like mysterious about these unique bucks. You're right, though. I mean, when you break it down, it's not rocket science. It's not anything special. You know, as Rising says, they're just goats that live in the woods, basically.
How about Bomar? They're behind every tree for that guy.
Listen, well, that's a whole different discussion, a different podcast on that side. Tune in next time to find out.
Yeah.
So, no, I would not mind, if anyone's listened to this, I would not mind pulling in Josh Bomar on a future podcast here, if anyone has connections there, to talk about the mystique around the Bomar 6.
Has he killed 6 of them?
6 200.
Is that the most of anybody that we know? Because it was a Hayes has killed 4 of them, right?
Yep. Higgins is 2 3.
2 or 3?
Yep.
Rising's got 1.
1.
Lee Lakoski?
Lee's probably 4 or 5 by now.
Okay. We're going to get Lee on, too.
Stan Potts is 2 or 3.
Give me a minute.
Give me a second. But yeah, I would be intrigued on that because Bomar is definitely what I would classify.
He's young, dude. He's like your age.
Young. I would classify him as an intense deer manager as well. Like a very, very intense management
he's
prospect.
Intense, for sure.
Like, so, I mean, is there a secret that Bomar has to growing 6 200 inchers, or is it pure luck?
I don't know.
Tune in next time. No, we don't have him next time.
It must be the nose button. That's probably what does it.
Saw Levi killed another giant yesterday, too.
Did he?
Some bitch.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, in Illinois. So, anyways, awesome talking to Rendell Erik, which, by the way, if you did not know, that's 2 first names, not his first and last name.
Rendell Erik Roderick.
Yep. Is it Rendell or Eric? Oh, I have 2 first names? Can't trust
I asked him. I was like, is that your middle name? He's like, I have 2 first names.
Just like Ricky Bobby.
So my mom's like, never trust a guy with 2 first names. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. So anyways, we appreciate Rendell coming on, and we will catch y'all next week.
Later.
Take me